Blank check with Griffin and David. Blank check with Griffin and David. Don't know what to say or to expect. All you need to know is that the name of the show is Blank Check.
Podcasts don't think like we do. People forget. I gotta start over. Podcasts don't think like we do. People who forget like that. Jesus
what
Christ.
The fuck? Sorry.
Podcasts don't think like we do. People who forget that get themselves killed. When you look into a podcast's eyes, you are seeing your own emotions reflected back at you and nothing else.
It's true.
It's true, right?
It's a good line.
I didn't go for the most iconic line. I looked for the truest
best
line.
True friends.
We are, of course, hashtag the true friends.
Yep.
And this is Blank Check. This is a podcast about filmographies, directors who have massive success early on in their career and are given a series of blank checks to make whatever crazy passion projects. I can't speak to it. I didn't sleep very well.
A disaster.
I'm a disaster.
Why didn't you sleep well?
I mean, dude, what a time waste of a question.
The old Backaroo?
Back's not doing great.
Sure.
I don't know if our guest knows this. I have a serious back injury.
How'd you get that?
Work.
Doing stunts?
Dialogue.
Dialogue.
Yeah. You know, the way that serious actors injure themselves on a stunt-based TV show.
Is it a good shot?
Marginal.
You think it'll make the show?
It's certainly not like the moment in
Can we
Mission
talk about
Impossible
Fallout right now? Can we start
Yeah.
right now?
Yeah, because like for film nerds like us, you see Fallout and you turn to whoever you're seeing it with and you go, that's the shot where he broke his ankle. And it's like really exciting to people. And they're like, seriously? And you're like, yeah, he's running on the broken ankle.
I had no idea that shot was going to start a minute and a half before the injury, that he was just going to book across that roof. And then when I realized that that's what I was seeing, was like a rubber band just being pulled and pulled and pulled.
Yeah.
I was going to end with like Tom Cruise actually injuring himself on screen.
Yeah. It doesn't end. That's the middle of the chase is what's crazy.
Well, I'm saying that shot.
Oh, yes. It is insane. There is a moment I cannot get over in that movie, which is when like as part of the like comedic dynamic of Benji giving him all the like dumb glib notes where he goes, can you go any faster? And Tom Cruise looks like he's running as fast as any human can. And then he like throttles up to the next gear. I cannot get past that moment.
It's great.
I've also now, when I
again.
need to get hyped up about stuff, I listen to the score track on the soundtrack when he's running.
Which one is that? Because I listen to the score a lot.
I think it's called like Windows and Rooftops or something like that.
Yeah, there's the best track. Now I'm going to look up what my favorite track.
I've seen it 4 times. I saw it twice last weekend. And
that's a good weekend.
I want to tell you,
It is a good weekend.
there's a really cool thing music-wise in that movie, which is that moment where he crashes the motorcycle and then pulls out a knife. And you're just like, what are you doing, motherfucker? You got nothing. And then he slips into the hole, and then you're underground, and it's cold and dark and safe. They start playing a cue that is actually just a lift from the old 60s TV show, copied and pasted right onto the movie. It doesn't sound like anything else in the movie. And it's this weird dog whistle that just like, I wept with joy for like 4 minutes after seeing that movie for the first time. I just love it.
I do think it's the best score out of the 6 movies.
No.
I think this one's
it's a good score.
incredibly
Great
good.
score.
Incredibly
Great
good.
score.
Your
No
favorite's
beef.
Ghost Protocol.
Those strings, though.
Yeah.
Gee,
I think this is the best score, but it's like never going to get enough credit because it's so much repurposing of the pre-existing
it's
themes.
pretty distant from the last 2 scores. I also love the Rogue Nation score. I think the Rogue Nation score is fabulous.
It's a series with good scores,
Underrated.
and I like that they switch it up.
Yeah, I do too. But the Series 5 score is very orchestral.
Yes.
And there's number 6 is much more Series 5. I just said, I don't know what the fuck I'm talking.
Who
Fallout
knows?
is much more like electronic and music-y and weird.
It's very like haunted too.
Fallout.
Yes. Fallout though.
Fallout is a
Fallout-
celebration of life.
The
It's
Fallout,
a celebration of dance.
All your good intentions.
Yes. I won't let you down.
The blood.
I won't let you down.
You choose.
Je suis désolé.
I won't let you down.
You choose to accept it.
So it's a podcast about Fallout, directors who have massive success early on in their career, and sometimes those checks get blank checks. Jesus Christ. Sometimes those checks clear Ben, and sometimes they fall out baby. It's a miniseries on the films of Ang Lee. We've gotten to his 2nd Academy Award for Best Director. It's called Life of Pi.
Yes.
That is the movie we're talking about today.
Yes.
His highest grossing film,
Worldwide, I think so.
Shit. I watched Pi.
Man,
No.
Ben,
Damn it.
didn't you do some other bit like this recently? What did you text us? I can't remember.
we told him to watch Taking Woodstock, and instead he watched Woodstock 99 on
no,
YouTube.
but no, there was something with Billy Lynn as well. What was the Billy Lynn thing? I can't remember.
I'm going through a rough patch in life.
We told him to watch Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk, and he thought we were telling him to take a long walk.
And that I did.
He did.
That he did. It's
Ben's going through a transient stage. Is that fair to say?
I'm going through an air mattress
Sure.
at various friends' apartments stage.
Right.
I think it's important that we document all of our personal lives on this podcast so
Definitely.
that if we ever listen back, we'll be like, oh,
It's a time
that's
capsule.
what was happening
Yeah.
to me.
What day? Can we say what day it is? Because you guys
No.
never do that.
No, we're not
you
going to
don't want to do that.
So
We want people to triangulate it, to guess
we're
it
not-
based
we're
on
not-
context.
I'm not
clues.
giving you a date.
If you
but-
say a date, I'm going to bleep it.
yeah.
Yeah. By the way, Alec Baldwin just dropped out of the Joker movie. So
Life of Pi is his third highest grossing domestic and his highest grossing worldwide.
So did
By
Crouching
far.
Tiger and Hulk beat it worldwide? Or domestic, I mean?
Yeah.
Okay. And worldwide, this was
By far, because
blockbuster.
I think his second highest grossing worldwide is Hulk, which made 245, and this made 609 worldwide.
That's such a weird thing.
This was a huge hit in India and
Yes.
China.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was like his biggest movie in Asia, I think.
For sure,
Yeah.
it has to be
Far and
yeah.
away.
Yeah.
To join us on today's episode, we have a very special guest. He's a dear friend of mine. He's a remarkably talented filmmaker. Emmy Award winner?
Absolutely.
He's an Emmy Award winner. Do you
I
know
wish
this?
I could say absolutely to the question.
To
Emmy
that
Award
kind of
winner.
Yeah. David, Pulitzer Prize winner?
No.
Give it a second.
Yeah,
Ben.
give me a minute.
Ben, Fuckmaster?
Hell yeah.
His work can be seen on the new Netflix series Maniac, which will be out by the time this episode comes out.
I'm not
right?
sure. It might be a week before Maniac. I might be
interesting.
legitimately be a part of like the rollout of Maniac.
We'll be in the space. Okay.
That's exciting, though. I didn't realize. That's great. Is that going to be good? I'm excited for that. I'm very intrigued by that.
I can't put into words how good it is.
All right.
I'm so just like freaked out and honored to be like a part of like the crafts people that made that show.
Cool.
I have a small like 4-minute section of it that I was responsible for, and it was like felt like going back to film school. Or I cannot speak highly enough of what those people are doing.
Cary Fukunaga, right, is involved. He's sort of back. I feel like he's been chilling for a second, Cary.
There's a very good GQ article about him and sort of him feeling like I missed like 4 years prime of my directing life.
I would have
getting
loved
caught
to
up in
seen
sort of the
his
development
It.
cycle. Me too.
You don't feel like a lot of his ideas ended up in that movie?
I think a lot of them
some
did,
of them
and I think that's
clearly
the
in
stuff I
there.
like more in the movie.
Yeah.
And I have no problem
I
with
don't
Andy
mind that
Machete. I
movie.
think that movie's fun.
I
but
think
I
that
think
movie's solid.
the stuff that really pops for me is the stuff that feels like it very much came out of his development.
I like the part where he dances.
He took The Alienist and it like all the way
Right.
to the end, and
Right.
then decided not to do it.
Yeah.
So those are two projects I think are out there and that are popular.
Pretty
there are a
incubated
lot
by
of his stuff,
him.
and I think
Yeah.
is producer on both of them.
Yeah. That's the thing. I like. There are certain sections in it where I just wish he was literally the person choosing the coverage. Like
Absolutely.
because developmentally, I see him. all over
Life
that movie.
of Pi.
Life of Pi.
It's my fault.
Now,
I let us
Ray,
down this road.
you have worked on several Ang Lee films.
No.
Worked on one.
Yes.
You have been on set for several.
I visited 2 sets,
Mhm.
and then I was an actor in Taking Woodstock, and I was
Right.
also a camera operator in Taking Woodstock. 'Cause
Right.
I was
You
holding
play one of the filmmakers, so you're
Absolutely.
both on camera filming, and then some of your footage ends up in the movie when he does the crazy sort of Woodstock multi-camera thing, right?
Absolutely.
Yes.
What were the 2 sets you visited, though?
I had a pivotal life experience visiting the Ice Storm set
Cool.
as a 7th grader.
That was your bar mitzvah, right?
It honestly fucking was.
Essentially,
It
yeah.
really fucking
Yeah.
was. Like, it was just a day that my life changed forever.
Ray Tintori. I didn't know if I saw your name.
Hi, guys.
Yeah, hi.
Yeah, it was, Ray Tintori's
Right.
here.
So Ice Storm was like a life changer for you.
Yeah, and which I would love to give you guys some of the details of, because I
Please.
think it's like
Yeah.
the context of what was going on around that was just unbelievable. And then I spent 3 days on the Billy Lynn set
Right.
in Atlanta, and specifically the 3 days that was really they were shooting out that whole confrontation scene with Steve Martin at the very end.
Yes.
Ah.
So I basically was there very much fly on the wall, but just seeing Steve Martin just work so hard, you know, for 3 days. And really that was fast. That was so fascinating just to like,
to see those weird cameras and
oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And to see people sweat.
I love seeing geniuses when they don't know exactly what to, you know, it's like I would not say like he was perfectly in control, but I feel like he's been labeled a genius like 25 years ago now.
Yes.
And so it's just like him actually showing up and being like, I'm going to earn this today was just like amazing to see.
Here's a question for you. Like watching Ang Lee work with someone like Steve Martin, right? Who is like such a veteran at this point. And Ang Lee has this reputation for being like a man of few words in terms of how he directs his actors, you know? How much does he have to like get hands-on with a guy like Steve Martin about how weird and different this process is in terms of modulating his performance because of the technology? You know?
I mean, I'll tell you, when I say fly on the wall, I mean, I was on the wall. Right. They're in the center of the room.
Sure,
I'm not like...
You weren't butting your head into
I'm
that
at the monitor, you
yeah.
know, with like cool 3D glasses on, watching a feed of like not high frame rate, but really watching in 3D. I am not bothering anyone. I don't think anyone knows I'm there. And I think good directors, as you know, do not say things so loud that everyone in the crew understands the back and forth of how it...
That's a very good point. You know, that's a big difference between, for me, like...
a good director and a bad director.
Sloppy director.
Yeah.
Well, there's just a thing if a director is like, I'm going to save time by just peeking my head in and yelling something.
Right.
They think they're saving time, but they're actually killing like energy and goodwill.
Right.
Yeah.
Because then it's sort of like your mom showing up in the play date and being like, why haven't you done your laundry? You know, it like feels like that.
Pick up your room.
Yeah.
It's like a hurricane hitting here.
Mom, I'm playing Lego, you know? Jesus. And now you're like out of the Lego space.
I'm
now
playing
you're
my Lego game where the wizard is the captain of this spaceship.
What game is that?
I had a like long running in my head Lego like saga.
Oh, cool. That was your narrative?
Centered on a spaceship I built, but then I had like a wizard guy. And at some point, I put the wizard guy in the spaceship, and I was like, I guess he's like the captain.
Game changer.
Yeah, and then I was like, so he does magic, but they're in space. And then it all sort of evolved around that.
Was that sort of like an ongoing narrative then?
Yeah.
You established your play pattern. That was your...
Sure. Yeah.
I made myself like a space station that had a windmill inside of it. So there was a bedroom with the gears in the center of the bedroom, but then it also had like a crane on the outside, so it could like have a loading dock. That was
super cool.
That was a long narrative.
My big thing was a buddy cop dynamic between a cop and a T-Rex, which I realized
like the Whoopi Goldberg
was just
movie.
Theodore Rex.
Right.
Which I had tried watching and given up on.
Yeah,
it was like, this is bad as like a 6-year-old.
Right.
And then I was like, but I think I can make this work.
Yeah, maybe you did.
Up in the old Bing Bong, you know?
Oh, boy.
So Life of Pi is a movie with a very interesting development history. Because we are
let's talk about it actually,
context.
Ray. And then Ray will get into, the film itself. But like
Ray has set up like a small office in the corner of the Audible recording studio.
He's got some strawberry mango seltzer.
Different colored markers.
2 seltzers. Are you a 2 seltzer guy?
2 coffees, a fruit bowl, a phone charger. Hey, he's got an RX bar. I don't know if you noticed that.
Hey,
great product, great company.
6, I can't remember.
Very much on brand. I could not get the peanut butter chocolate though, which is my personal
That's your
favorite.
favorite.
Yes. Have you tried the peanut butter and jelly?
No.
Harder to find. Very good. Worth the effort. I'll say worth the effort. A gentleman's bar. But you've been doing like thorough research. You've been sending me over the last week all these different things. You've been like digging up, compiling, editing, condensing. And then I did not forward any of it to David and Ben because I'm a mess of a human being.
You certainly are.
This research was done out of crisis, I would say, more than out of a desire to be overprepared. There's a lot of stuff I know about the making of this film that I just wasn't. Basically, my boundary that I set was I can't come here and like spill the beans on. I'm not the Julian Assange of like Life of Pi, you know.
You're not aiming to be
you're not
blank checky
blow
leaks.
the lid on this one. Right.
Your mother was a script supervisor for Ang Lee on like a number of his films.
She was script supervisor in 3 films and the still photographer on 1 film.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it was Ice Storm, Woodstock, and then Billy Lynn was the one where she was still photographer. Yeah. So he's like a family friend of yours, and you did like very thorough cross-referencing to make sure that nothing you were saying hasn't already been shared publicly by.
Exactly.
And then the other thing, if I can embarrass you, is you did get like explicit permission from Ang Lee to be on the podcast to make sure he did not feel like you were betraying trust.
Yeah, I think anything less would have been unacceptable.
Yeah. I'm realizing I probably should have done the same with my father before I started talking about his financial problems 4 years ago.
Oh, interesting.
That might have been a smart thing to do.
How's he doing these days?
Okay. Steady.
Oh, that's good.
Steady.
I saw your dad at, I feel like the last time I saw your dad was at
Brewster McLeod.
Brewster McLeod.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Yeah, he showed up late. I've referenced this. Ray is the person who, and I've told him this is not anything he needs to feel guilt or shame about, but at the premiere of The Tick, Ray referenced how much he liked the bit of me talking about my father's financial problems.
Absolutely not true.
You invoked it in front of
No. What you
Peter.
said, no, I just remember what it was. My brother and my father were there, and you said, I feel like I know you guys better because of the way Griffin talks about you on the show. And that made my father very paranoid to figure out what I had said about him. Right? I think that's what you said.
I told Jamesy, who, by the way, did not appreciate being called Jamesy.
And who you'd never met before, and he doesn't go by Jamesy now. And whenever I invoke him in childhood stories, I call him Jamesy because that was his name until he was like 10.
The one story I referenced was some story about you having to have your toys cut back because Jamesy, which I thought was just hilarious. And he told me that was not what happened.
It's 100% what happened. James got the Nintendo 64 when the Berlin Wall came down against video game systems in our home.
I was the same thing. I was the person who had to sort of fight and scratch to get the fucking things.
There was a video game
and
Berlin
then once
Wall.
we had them,
and
my parents were like, oh, it's no big deal.
Jamesy went, Peter Newman, tear down this wall. And he got the 64 in his bedroom because I had more toys, because James didn't like toys, so no one ever knew what to buy him.
Interesting.
I honestly think your father baited me at a certain point because he was like, I'm a gambling guy, and like looked me really hard in the eye, and I went and just didn't take the bite.
I'd love to go gambling with your dad.
Here's the thing I want to clarify this on the record, okay? Which my father will love. Griffin Newman's on the record. My father had a gambling problem previously. The root of this problem was sports betting.
Right. That's the thing. Is like that's less fun to me.
I
would want
like
to go to like a casino with
guy.
your dad. Yeah, no. Okay.
I think he's gone to casinos casually. Never has a control
but
problem.
He would call his bookie every week and be like, "No, I figured it out. And like this week we're betting the spread on this." And like
that was his whole fucking thing. And like when I see like photos or videos of my parents before like I was born. A lot of their friends
referenced a lot.
Were just like, that was his gambling buddy. That was his bookie. When I'm like, well, who's this guy? Why did I never know this guy? And it was like, these are the guys that were conditionally.
Oh, he was last seen on the Verrazzano Bridge in 1982.
Right.
And then he mysteriously disappeared.
Right, but it's like Needles from Back to the Future too. And I'm like, who's this guy? My mom's like, that was the guy where your father had to stop seeing him in order for us to get married.
Did you guys not like the Needles line in Solo?
These
really?
are the guys
I
who
love
that.
I forgot to reference it.
Wait, what's the Needles line?
My friend Needles who died doing this.
I don't remember this line at all.
Oh my God. You guys are too hard.
A reference to the greatest character in the history of cinema. What are you, McFly, a chicken? So my father had a gambling problem, was like curtailed before I was born when my parents got married. And then independently, my father had financial problems. Because I've referenced both things, I think a lot of blankies have extrapolated, and it's even on the Wikipedia, that my father had a gambling like remission 4 years ago.
Interesting.
Which is not the fact. But that's sort of the narrative that's been crafted between the two
I understand.
things.
I honestly think I know what happened, which was before I even met you.
Yeah.
I had been listening to the podcast a little bit, and the first thing that I told my father, I said, Griffin really talks about Pete's gambling a lot on the show. And then I think my dad told him. And I think that...
that's very possible.
Does your dad listen to our show?
No, I just told
Does Ang Lee listen to our show?
Definitely.
Definitely, yeah.
He only listens to the Ben's choices, though.
Here's my concern with the one thing I did ask for explicit permission, and I think I wrote him I showed you the letter.
Yeah, very long.
A letter, email. Like a letter, like on paper,
an e-letter.
It was a long enough email, I think, to qualify as
fair enough.
As an animal.
Check.
Yeah.
Just check.
But I explained like my understanding of the show. Like, but I think the one thing I did not say is that you are a silly Billy.
Yeah, I am a silly Billy. And that I feel like the way you wrote the email made me sound a lot more legitimate. Because the way you described David is accurate, and the way you described me made me sound like an adult.
Yeah, but I think I was honest about what I think is the actual quality of the analysis going on here. But I am like the shoe that I'm waiting to drop is like an email from Ang Lee that's just like subject heading.
Who's this little stinker?
Fart detective? Question mark. Like what the fuck? You didn't tell me.
Who's this little stinker?
Yeah.
I'm the General Talbot.
I just like thinking that Ang Lee had to think about our existence for 1 second.
I love it.
He didn't probably have to think about us for very long.
He said he was delighted.
Well, but he's a very thoughtful man. I think the second he found out about the podcast, I'm not saying he listened to it, but I think he sat in a room in silence and really contemplated the notion of our podcast for 6 to 8 hours.
Right.
And I love that notion. And I wish he had known going into that deep thought that I'm a little stinker, but bygones. So things we've now clarified.
All right, we're done.
My father's finances were not tied to gambling.
We don't want to do another summer camp episode.
8 hours thinking about us.
Fair.
I did go to a summer camp in New Milford, Connecticut. It was for very special little boys and girls.
Very special.
All right, so Jan Martel wrote a novel. It came out in 2001, I think. Yes, 2001.
Big hit. Literary sensation.
It was a hit. It won the Man Booker Prize, which is a big British literary award. Yeah. David Sims read it by the pool in 2002.
Humble brag.
On a summer vacation. And so that's, I feel like, really crucial to the narrative.
That's the most important
film.
piece of context, because that's the moment when president of 20th Century Fox Film Production, Tom Rothman, gets the email. Okay, Sims has picked it up. We officially have gone cultural moment.
Fox 2000 executive Elizabeth Gabler is hot on that book.
She's the one
when
who
she
really
hears that I was reading it by a pool in Bordeaux.
She gets the ping.
Yeah.
Her beeper goes off.
And so she hires someone to write a screenplay, and they bring aboard who?
M. Night Shyamalan. Let's get him on the boat.
Very cool.
A very logical choice. He's the most famous Indian American director alive.
His films are very much about like religious crisis.
Absolutely.
Especially up until this point.
He loves
that's been
to wrestle with
theme.
like Catholicism, and he's never really made, since his debut film, Praying with Anger, he never made a movie that like really addressed identity in any particular way. So maybe this is going to be a way for him to like, kind of return to that initial theme that he explored.
Yeah. Oh, what a twist. But that's the interesting thing. I mean, this is very much of a piece with the things he was exploring in Praying with Anger and Wide Awake. But he has unquestionably become a much stronger filmmaker at this point. So the notion of him going back to religious material, crisis of faith stuff with his current toolkit. And it's also just exciting at that point in time to go like, oh shit, M. Night Shyamalan's going to make something that is in no way a thriller is kind of exciting.
Right.
He says his big hesitation that eventually caused him to leave the project was that
he wrote his own screenplay for the film. He was on board
in it. It was going to be his direct follow-up to The Village.
Yep.
It was set up, and he dropped out because he said, I got freaked out about the fact that it was kind of a twist movie, that it has a twist at the end, and I thought my name being attached to the movie with that twist at the end was going to bring too much baggage into the theater. People would expect, they'd be looking for.
He was very alarmed by the twisting, and I get it, actually.
I kind of do.
Yeah.
But so he instead makes Lady in the Water, which is
a triumph.
He makes another water movie.
It's a fascinating sort of like sliding doors thing where you just wonder if he had gone straight from The Village to this.
He may have he might not have done a good job though. Like who knows? And also it would have been a tougher movie to make even in 2004 or 5. Like visual effects wise and everything. Like I don't know how you do that shit. Like maybe it'd be a bad movie.
But even just alternate reality where like he's got his deal at Disney, he moves over to Fox to make Life of Pi, he makes his Tony film, then he just goes back to Disney and he still has that home. Whereas Lady in the Water like torpedoes like all of his major professional relationships.
Yeah.
So he drops out and they replace him with...
You're right. It's real sliding doors. Alfonso Cuarón.
Yes.
Oh, cool.
And he decides to make... They really contracted with the 3 sort of visually exciting, perhaps non-American directors. I mean, M. Night Shyamalan's American, but Alfonso Cuarón, and then he drops out to make Children of Men and Jean-Pierre Jeunet coming off of, I guess, a very long engagement.
Yeah.
He's the next... Yeah, because that's 2004. He's the next one who signs on.
Yes.
Writes a screenplay again. There's all these screenplays floating around by auteurs.
Because every person who came onto the project really tried to make it their own. It wasn't like they were working off of the basic adaptation that had been commissioned.
No, and because that's the thing. This film is credited to David Magee and no one else. None of the other scripts, I guess, were really involved.
And this is a book that people had said was kind of unfilmable.
Well,
people
it's
were
a book
I don't know how
that's
you
mostly
tackle this.
set on a boat, with one character, and animals.
Yes.
And mostly just one animal, and that's it. So yes, that's an inherently challenging.
It's got a weird narrative structure.
It also has all this stuff about religion that is hard to convey, I guess. You might worry to a mainstream audience, and it's very it has this dumb framing device that can suck in movies.
Yes.
I like the framing device a lot in
Movies
this
like
movie.
Citizen Kane.
Exactly. That movie's a fucking stinker.
What's the problem?
Yeah. Well,
No,
first
just
of all,
like, you know, the
Arson's a
thing where it's
fucking
like,
hack.
oh, well, let me tell you my story. And then you cut back to him and he's like, and so then the boat went over there. And you're
Sure.
like, oh, God. Anyway.
And there's also just the fact that like this movie, spoiler, hinges on the notion of, is the story you just saw true? Or is it sort of a metaphor for what happened?
Sure.
A non-literal retelling of the
That's
struggle, the
twist.
internal journey.
Spoiler
this guy
alert
went through.
for Life of Pi.
I think that plays differently when you're
What's
reading
the
it.
sled's name?
Pi.
Richard Parker.
It's Fight Club.
Yeah, it's Fight Club. The end of Life of Pi is that the sled is Fight Club.
Right. And then, Irfan Khan is like, you can't talk about this.
Yes.
The guy's like, so I'll write my novel now.
Right. And then they turn over the sled and they see Kaiser Soze written on the back. And then at the end, it turns out to be a sequel to Unbreakable.
My absolute favorite part, but one of my top 5, the breath that David takes before he says Unbreakable on the Split episode has just so much contained joy in it.
That's
you know?
wonderful.
It's
Wow, I should
I've
listen
just
back to that
rewound
one.
and rewound. It's just like, yeah.
People like it when David gets into the dirt with
Oh
me.
yeah, good episodes are often like David goofy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like dog.
When people say the dog is off the leash.
Right, exactly.
That's the term they use.
Hey Ben, well, this week we're talking about an Oscar-winning movie, Life of Pi,
That's true.
and we are being sponsored by one of our closest sister podcast friends. Is that how to describe a sister podcast friend?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, it's called Little Gold Men. It's a podcast, you might have heard of it. It's from Vanity Fair, and it's hosted by
I think I know who.
multiple friends of the
yeah,
podcast.
I think
You got
I know these guys.
Katie Rich.
Sure.
You know, she's been on a few episodes. Titanic, Sixth Sense.
Yep.
Broadcast News. You
I met her baby.
She's a great baby. He's a toddler now.
Oh, he's not even a baby anymore.
Yeah. Time, is
It's a
fleeting.
flat circle.
Correct. You got Joanna Robinson on our Minority Report episode. You got Richard Lawson. He's
I like Richard.
on so many Blank Check
I
episodes.
mean,
These
I
are-
like all the hosts,
And you
but I
got-
like Richard
You got
a
Mike
lot.
Hogan, who's a very important person, but we'll get him on Blank Check. Why not?
Sure.
And it's on Vanity Fair.
Let's get Oscar on the show.
Oscar himself, Oscar.
Just a statue. Why not?
Sure, great. Yeah, let's bring him on, the little gold man himself, because this is a podcast where they talk about the Academy Awards, the Emmys, like awards season. They talk about movies and pop culture, with an eye on the award ceremonies coming, but like, they go in all kinds of different directions, especially because it's a year-long podcast. They do great interviews. And, look, I'm not going to pigeonhole Blanky listeners, but you're a bunch of nerds. You probably care about this stuff as much as I do. And if you're interested in like the movie business and award season and everything that's coming out this fall, it's kind of essential to listen to it. And Katie and Richard and Joanna and Mike, they're so smart and they know what they're talking about.
So check out Little Gold Men.
Yep.
On Apple Podcasts.
Yep. Stitcher, wherever,
Spotify, wherever you listen to your shows.
Google Play. What else you got?
I don't know. There's others.
Sure. This is sort of a bad note to end on, isn't it?
Bye.
Little Gold Men. 2009.
Yes.
Ang Lee comes aboard and says, this movie's going to cost $120 million.
Yeah.
Fox is freaked out. They're not sure. And then I guess they eventually are like, well, all right, like, let's do it.
They dragged their heels on it for a little bit because they were courting him very hard. He agrees to do it. He starts developing it, and then he
It's gonna be
goes,
expensive.
okay, cool. I figured out how to do it. This is what I need.
Right.
It became an all or nothing proposition of, if I'm going to make this movie, it has to be this. I mean, do you want to weigh in on this, Ray?
Yeah, I'm going to try not to interrupt you like that.
No,
Please interrupt us.
Interrupt us, please.
I think this is a really interesting dynamic as I've read about it because it seems very different than what you usually get, which is a director who's like, what I'm going to make is going to be so good that it's going to make money, and I don't really care to figure out how that happens.
Sure.
And then the studio's like, convince us. I think Ang Lee thought that this was a hit.
Right.
Way before he did.
Right.
And he thought that they weren't serious.
He thought it was esoteric, and I don't understand how you can put this sort of studio pressure on a movie that There's a quote I read in some of the material you sent to me was he met with Tom Rothman and he said, "What kind of movie do you think this is?"
Yeah.
And Tom Rothman said, "I think it's a family movie." Yeah. And he said, "What the fuck are you talking about, family movie?" And
his family dies at the bottom of the ocean.
He said, "What happened when you read the book?" And he said, "I finished it and I gave it to my wife." And he said, "Then what?" And he said, "The rest of my family read it."
Sure.
And he went, "That's the point. Everyone I know who's read this book has shared it with their whole family.
That's
and
how I
everyone
read
in the
it.
family gets something else out of it."
It also went around my family. I'm sure either my dad or mom bought it because it won the Booker Prize.
Right.
They read it, and then they were like, magical realism. Check it out.
That was like, Tom Rothman's whole sell was this movie has some weird reflection pool kind of thing where people like see themselves in it, regardless of age, regardless of background, and it works as sort of this like Rorschach test.
Have you guys read the
Griffin
book?
Phrase.
I have not read the book. I've read them. Yeah,
I do think the triumph of the book is the first part, like and the part with the family, the part where he explains his relationship with the religions, all that stuff. Like that is when you're just like, I love this man so much, and I love his family. You're just so, and then all the rest of the shit, you're so hooked. But it's because you're so like you're so into pie. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I'm sorry. I feel like I cut you off in the cutoff races.
Oh my God.
Of 2018.
Stop. It's okay. Everyone talk.
But yes, this notion that they were courting him very aggressively, that they were like, this is a major commercial film, and that he then started considering it and came back to them and went, okay, I agree with you, but the only way to make it is this level of technological breakthrough, this level of difficulty in production.
And I guess 3D is like a thing right about now, right? Because it's
Avatar
2009, 2010, but like it's sort of like brewing.
This is like in the lead up to Avatar when people are like, I don't know if that thing's
it's just
gonna fucking work.
Me seeing Beowulf 5 times.
Right,
Yep.
right. I remember seeing Beowulf with my friends and going, so think about what we just saw, and James Cameron is now making an alien war movie. And we were just like, whoa. But that was sort of, that was like the hanging promise of like, either he's going to elevate it or the thing just dies with James Cameron. And he got really into, I mean, a thing I always think about with regards to this movie is films set on water are kind of perfectly made for 3D.
Absolutely.
Because of the water working as a surface, everything above it. It makes this shadow box effect where it's like the water into a vanishing horizon in the middle of the sea, everything floating on top of that, you know?
Do you see Fallout in 3D?
I haven't yet.
3D is exquisite.
I've heard that it's like the best post-conversion.
You must go up to 84th Street, that's where it's still playing in 3D, and see it. The bulb is pretty good. And
it's a good bulb?
It's a good bulb, which you really got to find.
This is what I love about
you
Ray.
need it to be bright.
He
You're right, though.
He knows
that's
which
what I want to
theaters have
hear.
good bulbs. Yeah.
You got to tell me where the good bulbs are.
I saw it opening day at ArcLight in 3D in LA, which was just perfect.
Yeah.
And then saw it IMAX 2D, saw it on a shitty multiplex in Florida 2D, and then saw it up on 84th Street.
So you haven't done 4DX yet?
I missed 4DX. I heard it was amazing.
I heard it was amazing too. Our friend Bobby Fingered said it was phenomenal, and it's like literally the thing that I feel most impeded in my current state of back injury is that I can't see 4DX movies. I've had to pass on The Meg. I've had to pass on Fallout. All I want to do is be 4DXing left and right.
I'm going to say is that tarmac in Fallout is one of the most memorable things in the movie. That like opening, and it's like it's very much like what the water in this film feels like, where it's just anytime you see it, it's just glorious. Yeah.
That's fucking awesome.
Yeah.
So he gets into that thing. He gets into the idea of shooting the movie in India and in Beijing, places that don't really have Taiwan. Sorry.
He goes home.
Taiwan and Pondicherry. And these are places that don't really have production infrastructures.
Certainly not for a movie like this. Certainly not Pondicherry, which is like the opposite end of India from like where the film industry is, the big film industry.
Right, but they shoot obviously the opening stuff, the home stuff in Pondicherry, and then they shoot all the water tank stuff in like Taiwan.
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
He returns to Taiwan basically as like the prince of the country.
Yes.
You know,
he's like the national hero.
I honestly think...
Is he really that? He's that highly regarded? I mean, he did make like... He won an Oscar.
It's a little bit like Peter Jackson bringing home. He basically did that thing where it's like, if you go home with a movie with a budget this big, they will give you an airport.
Yeah.
They give him an airport.
They rolled everything out. Right.
Yeah. And so...
Right. They filmed this movie in an airport. Because they didn't have
like they're just like, just take it. Right.
There
do
wasn't
what you will.
A tank. There wasn't a studio. They were just like, we'll give you the amount of space to be able to build that.
You're right. In a disused airport.
Wow. I will say that every time I visited an Ang Lee set, it's never been like a proper studio.
Like it's never in some normal. He doesn't like just go to Burbank.
Ice Storm shot in the Armory up in Harlem on 134th Street, the home of the Harlem Hellfighters.
Sure.
And was so cool. And in Atlanta, it was some funky warehouse. They all made this movie in like an abandoned airport filled with dog shit.
Yeah, he's never really made a soundstage movie.
I think they're always pushing. I think they're always putting the money on the screen. I really think it's like, and I really admire it. It's never like, oh, this is a really great craft service table. It's like, even when it's a big movie, it's like, let's push this.
I have a Billy Lynn question now, because I believe on next week's episode, which we definitely haven't recorded, we say that
it was definitely
shot,
really short and
we
concise.
say that it was shot in a stadium in Dallas, but we don't say, like someone said that, we were like, oh, okay. I can't remember which of us. No one's to blame here.
David.
It's all good.
It was David.
But it was shot in Atlanta.
The stadium scenes?
Yeah. Did they just use the Atlanta stadium?
There was a
the
set that I visited,
if you don't remember, it's okay,
was in Atlanta, and it was a warehouse where they had like the interiors in Iraq, and they had like his house.
Right. I mean, you were in the office.
So basically, there was all that stuff. There was a stadium that was about to be demolished that they shot all of the stadium scenes in.
Because I was just wondering like how they accomplished the stadium stuff. It's crazy. Anyway. Cool. Good to know. So whatever we say next week.
I do love that about him, and that's one of the things I feel like we've talked in this miniseries is he's got a really good sense of place. His locations don't feel arbitrary, and the movies feel very tied to them. So yeah, I mean, which makes this movie sort of an odd duck in his career up until this point, because you have a film whose like centerpiece, middle act, is entirely a CGI created environment.
Right.
But yes, he throws out this list of demands. Has to be $120 million. I have to shoot it in 3D, which hasn't really been proven at this point. I want to cast an unknown 16-year-old to play the lead part because it has to be someone the audience doesn't have a relationship with.
Right.
I mean,
like as opposed to the super famous person that could play this part.
Right. Which is the other crazy thing. You know, it's a movie where like by design, there's no bankable movie star that can place in it. Even in supporting roles, there aren't really positions like that other than
Tobey Maguire.
The one they try to do. Now, this speaks to Ray and I can't speak today.
Jesus Christ.
Our crazy relationship to this movie.
Okay.
Which is that Ray and I, who were not yet friends at the time, years later found out that we were both at the same screening of this movie.
Okay.
That was a work in progress, friends and family screening.
Okay. Why were you at this screening?
Because Ang Lee's producing partner, former assistant, lived in my building growing up. And my father would have friendly conversations with him in the elevator.
So you got an invite.
What's Ang up to now? You know? And he'd go, Hulk, it's going to be very crazy. You know?
Tony Lung's balls, man.
Right. That's what he said, less caution. And he went, not for kids, not for kids. Like he'd throw out his like one sentence in the elevator ride. Brokeback Mountain, really good, very sad. You know, it'd be his like very quick pitch on whatever the movie was before he got to like the 8th floor or whatever. And he reached out to my dad and said, so we've picture locked this film in terms of, not picture locked, but we've locked our edit. We think we have our cut. We haven't started the effects. They're going to be so expensive that we want to make sure the edit is perfect before we actually
do all the effects and all
right.
that shit.
Would you want to come to this friends and family screening and give notes? My dad said, I will probably fall asleep. My dad's very bad at staying awake during movies.
Did he fall asleep during Brewster?
No, he didn't. That's like his favorite movie ever.
It's a weird movie.
Yeah.
That movie is weird.
Yeah.
That's what he said after we saw it.
Griff, I gotta say, that movie is so weird.
and he's right. It is weird. It's very weird.
If my father was famous, I would be on Saturday Night Live now. I've like honed my impression of my father so meticulously.
Sure.
Because they'd be like, we got to get someone who can play Peter Newman on the show. Griff, that movie, it's so far out there.
Do you think Saturday Night Live is interested in someone doing Ethan Hawke monologuing about Elvis and the King?
Can you do your Ethan Hawke impression?
The thing about Elvis is he always went for the money. I lose it. I can do the thing about Elvis.
You're getting Mike fright. You had it really good before we recorded.
It's not about Mike fright. It's about it just has to sort of be bubbling within me.
Our mutual friend who introduced us, Jordan Fish.
Fish.
Hey, Jordan. He made an AI where you could text with Ethan Hawke that was basically just took really pretentious Ethan Hawke interview answers and just like gave oblique answers to whatever you were saying, and it was awesome.
Can I tell a terrible Ethan Hawke story?
No!
And the person who's terrible in the story is me.
No! Oh, fine, go ahead. How short is it?
Very short.
Okay.
I filmed a short film in high school.
Okay.
And I needed an office space in it because in high school I made short films about people who worked in offices.
An experience you were deeply familiar with.
Everyone else was making like short films about like kids hanging out.
Right.
And then I made these films that starred adults who didn't go to our school, and everyone would be like, "What the fuck is this?" And it was like, yeah. But so I got like a friend of my father's to give me their office over the weekend and be like, hey, 4 teenagers and a random 35-year-old man are going to come into your office on Saturday and shoot a bunch of scenes. And they were like, here you go. Here are the keys.
Okay.
And Ethan Hawke was using a back room in the office at the time as like his temporary office. And we found it so funny that there was like this big Ethan Hawke like nameplate on the thing. And then he had his little like, not mailbox, but his little like folder to put like mail into, right? So the guy, the lead in my movie,
what did you do?
Had this big beard. And we had to cut it to then shoot earlier scenes before the beard has grown out.
Okay.
And we collected all the beard clippings and we put them in an envelope and put them in Ethan Hawke's folder.
Why'd you do that?
Horrible.
That's dumb.
Terrible. I said the story makes me look bad.
Yeah, it does.
We thought it was really funny because we thought, like, will he open this and be like, God, I get it. That is profound, man.
The thing about Elvis.
Yeah. Oh, my God. The thing about Elvis.
I love that he's in that Elvis documentary and just talks about Elvis for a while. And at no point is it like Ethan Hawke's relationship with Elvis is this, because he doesn't have one.
Yeah.
He just wants to rap about Elvis.
I just love how much Ethan Hawke has figured out his thing and how much we're all like,
I love him.
we're on board now.
I'm so
We're
on board.
100% on board
I'm so
now.
on board. Anyway, you guys were at the same screening.
Which was,
of Life
here's
of
the
Pi.
movie with 0 visual effects.
So this film came out in November 2012. So when's this screening, do you think?
I think this was September 2011. Does that sound right?
This is like a long time
Or is
before.
it earlier than that? I feel like it was like September 2010. Does that make any sense?
No, that seems crazy.
Feels more like the summer to me.
No, yeah, it's.
But was it 2010 or 2011?
No, this
Definitely
film.
2011.
This film was
It was
shot
2011.
in
Okay.
2011.
Okay, so I think it was during the summer 2011.
Sure.
Yeah,
You took a big sip of
I
coffee.
believe so.
It was
Yes.
like a year and change before the movie came
That
out.
makes sense. That makes sense.
And we watched this cut that is near identical to the movie that you now see,
Sure.
but where the kid was visibly in a tank.
Okay.
You
Sure.
could see the green screen walls around him. You could
Right,
see the green screen reflecting on the water. The CGI was very sort of like pre-Visi.
So it's just like there's a tiger, but it's just like a little video game
It looked
PlayStation
like a
2
PlayStation
tiger. Right.
If anyone wants to know exactly what this looks like, this is public.
Okay.
This stuff is, if you just Google Halon, Halon Entertainment, it's a pre-viz company. They did the pre and post-viz, and you can watch.
But it's the post-viz that you saw, right?
Yes.
Like, yes, I was
Yeah.
watching this video. It's
Am
weird.
I correct in remembering that the tiger was gray, that it like wasn't colored in? No, it was
no,
colored.
it looks exactly like this. It has like
Okay.
a texture map on like
Yeah.
a pretty simple mesh.
So it looks like a Tomb Raider, like
absolutely
yeah,
like Tomb
early
Raider.
Tomb Raider tiger. Yes.
But you
There you
should
go,
also
Ben.
check
There
out
you go.
the other Halon Entertainment, because they basically they have pre-viz stuff for Red Tails that's fantastic,
Yeah.
and for Deepwater Horizon, which is fantastic, as well as like Ghostbusters, and like these are
That's
just
awesome.
these are amazing to watch.
Ben,
So-
check it out, Ben. Look at the video. Let's see.
Ben is
Let's see what
watching the
you got.
video. He is looking at it. He's peeping the video.
It's cool,
He thinks
right?
It's cool.
The movie shredded, and this is the thing that's amazing. Even with this level of like really simple, low res, the movie fucking killed.
Like
Yeah,
people were into it.
That was the thing I found most impressive was like as opposed to imagining you watch an unfinished pre-VFX cut of like Attack of the Clones, where it's all shot in a green screen and without those backgrounds and without those elements, the movie is nothing. You could tell how much thought he put into the framing, the construction of the sequences. Like there was still very clear visual storytelling in the journey of him on the boat and his survival without all the elements there.
Yeah, and I think a third of the tiger shots were an actual tiger.
Yeah, there's obviously real tiger mixed in when you're
Right.
watching it.
They
with,
never had what's the actor's name?
Suraj
Suraj
Sharma.
Sharma. Yeah, they never had him and the tiger in the same shot. They used shots of the tiger isolated for those sort of close-ups, or sometimes they composite together. A lot of that they then used as reference material and redid in CGI. But a lot of like the close-up tiger moments are real.
Basically, everything with the tiger, they got a real tiger to do it.
Yes.
And they filmed it. They had like a live action unit, and then they had basically a big blue cage that had a boat inside of it. And there was 4 tigers with like various levels of animalistic, there was one that basically had been named Jonas that had been kind of like raised as a human, like in a bed in Canada. Like it slept in the bed with his trainer, and that was the sweetheart.
And he went to Vassar, right?
Exactly,
Yeah.
for real. And so that one is like whenever it's like very sensitive. And like
Yes.
my mother said like, oh yeah, I was in the cage with Jonas. That's fine. But the other ones were like, let's all stay out of the cage.
That was like
I would not, to be clear, go anywhere near a tiger.
Never.
Ever.
on season 1 of The Tick, when we had the Midnight the Talking Dog,
Cool.
they had 2 dogs on set, and the trainer, I was like, what's the difference between the 2 dogs? And he was like, one of these dogs is better at stunts, one of them is better at dialogue. But you saying that Jonah was like the sensitive tiger, it is like certain like animals, you're like, oh, this guy's better at close-ups.
It's really true.
For whatever reason, this animal you can project emotions onto.
Right? I have done some heavy lifting directing animals in my life, and there definitely is. It's like they do different things, and you swap them out.
Yeah.
You know?
No, it's crazy. With this dog, it was just like the dog had some intelligence in its eyes, and they were just putting meat on a stick and making him look at different marks, and then that dog sells it more in its body language that then when you put the Mr. Ed like talking mouth over it, you know?
Yeah. And
it fucking works.
I would say just the thing about directing animals is like you set up, what you need to do is you need to set up a system of positive reinforcement where you basically make a deal with the animal so that they know if they do this, they get that. And basically you have animals that have either bought in.
Yes.
It's almost like they've bought into society and capitalism or not.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, I'll do this even if it's uncomfortable for a second because I know I'll get this treat.
The thing they would do with Midnight was they'd say like, good take, pay him.
Yeah.
And then a guy would walk over with a treat. And it was like, that was like the payment system.
Yeah. Sure.
Of like positive, like Pavlovian reinforcement.
I prefer money.
Sure.
Yeah.
So the other crazy thing about this earlier version we saw is that clearly the studio was like, we need one big movie star in this. And Ang Lee called upon his previous collaborator, Tobey Maguire.
Who he had made 2 films with.
Yeah, at like the beginning of his career before he became a minted movie star to play the part of Yann Martel.
Right. Except no, he plays reporter apparently.
I remember him explicitly being Yann Martel
in that styled exactly. Right. That was the thing. Is that they took
because in this they make Rafe Stahl reporter.
No.
Really?
He's Yann Martel. No, he's an author. He says, "I loved your first book," and he's like, "I threw away my book." I'm just going by the incredibly well-known, accurate website Wikipedia.
Okay,
where I know it's linking. No, but here's the thing: it's linking to a Hollywood Reporter article that says he's playing a reporter.
I remember him explicitly being Yann Martel. I don't know if they throw his name onto him, but the crazy thing is
they never say his name in this movie.
They got weirdly didactic about trying to make him look exactly like Yann Martel, someone that people are not familiar with the visual appearance of.
Yeah, they shouldn't care about that.
And can you Google Yann Martel quickly?
It doesn't look like... I know what Yann Martel looks like, but I mean, here...
He's got very distinctive hair.
He does. He's got sort of a bouffant hairstyle.
A curly mop of lightly parted orangey hair.
Yeah, he's got kind of a Malcolm Gladwell style.
Yes, but like,
you know...
Right. Yes.
A big blonde fro.
So they put that wig on Tobey Maguire.
So he looked like Sean Penn and Carlito's way?
Correct. And it was the single most distracting thing I have ever seen in a movie.
Because they recast him and reshot it all, they must have gotten that note so many times.
I mean, this screening we were at, which was like the first time they were really showing the movie to people. And I'd say there were probably like 30 people there, right? It was like it was like a screen at the AMC 25. It was somewhere between 30 and 40 people. And afterwards, it wasn't like a Q&A session. It was like an open forum discussion for like over an hour about all the different aspects of the movie. And that was the big thing that everyone threw out. And it was pretty interesting because like Ang Lee would weigh in with his like, well, this is what we were trying to do. I'll explain to you why it turned out that way. And the thing he said was, it felt like we didn't want it to be distracting that Spider-Man is in this movie. But it somehow became the most distracting thing in the world. Right. That it's like they're trying to disguise Spider-Man.
Yeah, no, that doesn't work. Right. Yeah.
And his performance, I remember, as being like, he feels in it. He feels committed. Like, he's certainly trying.
He's a decent actor.
I thought his performance was fantastic.
But you, like, could not fucking get over it. It was, like, so jarring. And especially when, like, in the middle of the story, it cuts back to Tobey Maguire with, like, this SNL-level wig. It's also, like, distracting to have, like, in a movie that's mostly unknown actors and then, like, Irfan Khan, right? To cut to someone who is, like, so iconic to American audiences, certainly at that point, is still, like, you know, very well known and associated with, like, a really big blockbuster role. And to just cut back to him wearing, like, a Mad TV getup.
I also think with Irfan Khan's so good in this
movie.
So
fucking good.
There's so many pivot points that
fantastic
where things could get by the film that he just catches and goes like, this is now nailed down. Everything's going to happen in the next 25 minutes is based off of this one little
He's one of those just like brutally honest actors.
Extremely crucial to this film's success,
and like,
in my opinion.
I've never seen a movie with him in it before, but you just know he's such an old shoe, like incredibly, this guy is a movie star, and setting him up with someone like Rafe Spall who just gets like blown over.
Yes.
And the character is supposed to get blown over.
That's the thing. It kind of, it like was to the movie's detriment that you were spending that much time paying attention to and thinking about Tobey Maguire. You kind of need someone to just like show up and do the job. I think Rafe Spall's a very good actor. it feels like
Ray Spall's
almost
good too.
by
I
design
like
in
him.
this movie, he's just kind of doing the bare minimum.
Yeah, he's pretty quiet.
Not in a lazy way, but I think
no.
they knew you can't have the guy asking the questions overpower the guy who's answering.
I look at his blazer sometimes. I think that's cool.
Yeah.
I think about the fact that Timothy Spall is his dad, and then I sort of ponder both actors' handsomeness
Sure.
and like how different they are.
You feel like him and Ben Stiller are both just like waiting for their genetic time bombs to go off. You know what I mean? They're just like,
Yeah, right. It's like they'll wake up, they're 50 years old, and they're like, wait, what is this?
happened?
Irfan Khan, whose
Whose performance
fantastic
was, I mean, it
actor.
feels like there are a couple pieces of coverage that maybe they reused from our version. I can't tell, but it feels like they wholesale. I remember, I want to cross-reference with you. I remember in the version we saw they never left the house. Is that incorrect?
that's probably incorrect.
Okay. Because all the stuff with them walking around the city, I remember it being very housebound, their whole conversation.
But how? I mean, that transition from them on the bench to the set piece of the shipwreck. There's no way that
That's
happened
true.
inside.
That is true.
You know, that's so boarded.
Yeah.
Right, and there's that sort of crucial moment where they're looking out at the ships in the
Yeah.
in Montreal or whatever, right?
And
Like, they
the
have a
opening
conversation on the bench.
The opening chunk, they're very isolated. Like they're keeping them in very, very isolated coverage.
Yes.
So I was watching and being like, right, I guess they must have only shot Rafe Spall stuff and reused all the Irfan Khan stuff. But then it starts to become more and more
They
them
probably
together.
did a mix, right? I
Yeah.
mean, yeah.
Honestly, the thing that I don't understand, like logistically about this movie, is both times they shot those bookend
Yeah.
things, it was 2 days.
That's crazy.
That is
A
crazy.
lot of
Yeah.
really heavy lifting to
It's
do.
a lot of dialogue.
Yeah, it's just
2 days.
also
I mean-
crazy to think of him giving that entire performance twice.
They go away, they're in a lot of the first
Yeah.
third of the movie, and then they do kind of basically
Once you get to the
vanish.
boat, it becomes more present tense.
It's
ties
all
narration. Right.
until the carnivorous island. That's when and then he's like, the island was carnivorous, and you're like,
Oh, this
right,
guy.
yeah, they're
Yeah.
back. Here they are. Irfan Khan, great actor. I knew him because he'd been in this movie, The Warrior,
Mhm.
which was this sort of. It's not a Bollywood movie. It's like a British Hindi movie that's kind of like a sort of its Indian samurai movie. It's great.
Okay.
He's awesome, and that was the surprise BAFTA winner of like best British film.
He was in Salam Bombay, right?
Yes,
Yes.
all the way back. I
Right.
didn't see that till later. And what had he been? I'm trying to think if like
This is
he's
when
in like he's in the
starting to
Namesake.
cross over.
He's
Right.
in
He's
the
in
Darjeeling Limited,
and then Slumdog. He plays
and he's in Slumdog. Obviously, he's
the opposite role of this.
He's
He
the
plays
villain,
the guy
yeah.
who's
He's-
asking the questions that sparks the story.
in Hindi cinema. He's often the villain. Like
Yeah.
he's typecast as a villain.
And here he's usually like cast as like, because then he's in Jurassic World. He's in like Amazing
They're both-
Spider-Man 2.
He's kind of great in
Yeah.
Jurassic World. In Amazing Spider-Man, he's in Amazing Spider-Man 1.
Oh, right,
Yeah.
right.
In both of those, he plays the businessman who's like, I'm sure it's fine. Like,
Both actors play the bad businessman in these new Jurassic Park movies.
yeah,
Oh, that's
I know.
weird.
Rafe Spall is the bad businessman in Fallen Kingdom.
Yeah.
A bit of a lazy performance. I know, no offense, Rafe, but
Yeah.
he is just kind of like literally says that line where he's like, well, we got to make money or whatever. Like,
My favorite thing is that Irfan Khan played Baloo in the Hindi version of the Disney
yes,
live
he
action
is-
Lion King.
right.
Or, not Lion King, Jungle Book.
Jungle Book. Yeah.
Yes.
No, he was in The Lion King. Baloo showed up for some reason.
Yes, he's also going to do the Tailspin movie, the live action. Irfan Khan's doing the live action.
If only.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
I wrote a paper on like postmodernism
Do you
in
think-
college about Tailspin. It was just
Do you
like,
think if I could go back in time and sit Rudyard Kipling down, I'd be like, one, don't send your son off to war. It's going to scar you forever.
Bad idea.
Two, you remember how there's like the bear in your Jungle Book stories? Well, that's going to be in a movie. And then that character will be a seaplane pilot in a TV show. He's going to run like a seaplane company.
Right. Shere Khan's in it too. Isn't
Shere
he
Khan
like
is
a
a
mob
businessman.
boss? Right.
Yeah.
He's a businessman in
They've
a
all been
skyscraper.
like transported to the world of like bush pilots. Like that's
Louis runs the bar that they all hang out at.
I will say,
It rules.
I
like,
think
who
it's
had
maybe,
that idea?
Right. Louis is kind of like the Casablanca setup. Like this is
He's
Rick's
like
place.
Sidney Green.
Yeah. It's like crazy.
It's like Roger Rabbit being like an extended riff on Chinatown that just like is going over the heads of like every
You should be
single
going
kid.
to Disney and pitching them. Here's the Sideways sequel to that Jungle Book movie
It's
that made
also
so much
set
fucking movie.
in the 30s.
Yes.
Like they explicitly reference World War One.
That's what I'm saying. It's like very
Like-
Casablanca.
No, I know, but like,
Yeah.
that's the thing. They're not just like, it's not just the dressing. They like address that they are in the 30s.
Yes.
That's crazy.
Yeah, because like something like Chippendale Rescue Rangers is
Also
just
fantastic.
like right, but it's like this could just be the
Do you remember
timeline.
the cult episode?
No, I don't remember.
There was an
that.
episode about mice that would bathe themselves in soda fountains, and it was a brainwash cult.
Jesus Christ.
It is the best fucking episode. It's so disturbing and like sorrowful.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think both those shows, I think it's in the run of like after Tailspin.
It was the
they're
Disney
like, let's do these
Afternoons
revisionists.
thing. Right, right. With like DuckTales and Darkwing Duck and that whole sort of extended universe they were making. But the weird thing is that like Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers is like, well, you could just go like this as part of the same timeline as the original shorts. They went from like fucking with people in trees to just putting on clothes.
Whereas this
and
is
mysteries.
like, you like the Jungle Book, right? Yeah, I like the Jungle Book. Okay.
Yeah.
Forget the Jungle Book except the characters.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Now, do you like bush piloting in the 30s? Do you want them to be living in a town called Cape Suzette, which is a pun on crepe Suzette?
I was such a literal kid that when Tailspin went on, I would like just break down and I'd ask my parents, I'd be like, has he met Mowgli yet or not? Like I couldn't fucking
You just
figure it out.
Logical.
And they were like, this is a different Baloo. And I was like, but it's not.
It's not. It's Baloo.
Yeah.
And anyway, what do you think Rudyard Kipling would think of that?
I think he'd love it.
Yeah, he'd be like, sounds great.
Yeah.
Do I get residuals?
He'd ask for points.
Yeah.
Yeah. The best Robot Chicken sketch they've ever done is they did a Bourne Identity parody where Baloo is in the jungle for Jungle Book and starts having flashbacks to the suppressed memory of
Tailspin.
him. Yeah.
That's funny. Have you ever seen Dennis Hopper reading that Rudyard Kipling poem on the Johnny Cash show?
No.
Google Dennis Hopper reading If.
Uh-huh.
The last 10 seconds of it will just make your heart stop. It's
Amazing.
incredible.
Life of Pi.
Right. They offered the role to Baloo. He turned it down. Everyone contacted.
So you guys saw this screening. You saw it with Tobey Maguire. You saw it with no visual effects, basically.
Right.
You walked out of there. What?
Hadn't read the book, knew very little about it. I'm watching it. The first 40 minutes, I'm like, was I wrong in thinking this was about a kid in a boat?
Sure.
Because they go, as you said, they go really deep into setting up his character
Yes.
with a lot of like different like not dead ends, but just like different areas of just sort of fleshing this kid out and his family and his lineage. I mean, like when it starts with that much stuff with the uncle, I was like, did I read the wrong synopsis of this thing?
It's very novelistic, right? Where he's just like, let me explain. Like, this is going to take a while.
It's also a lot more stylized than any movie he's made up until this point.
Yeah, because you've got the guy with the tapered weird body and all the where you're like, whoa, that's sort of a crazy visual joke from the director of Brokeback Mountain.
Is aesthetically weirdly kind of this midpoint between Jean-Pierre Jeunet and M. Night Shyamalan. Like it does feel elements of both those
It's
guys.
also kind of Wes Anderson-y at points.
Oh,
like
the opening stuff is very art directed, is
Yeah.
very colorful, the narration, all of that. And I'm watching, I'm like, what the fuck is this movie? I have no idea what it is. Even like the two times he's made more fantastical movies at this point in his career, Hulk is pretty naturalistic. Crouching Tiger is pretty naturalistic, you know?
Yeah, no, you're right. I know you're
like he's working fantastical things into naturalistic environments. And then this is like starting out with like ostensibly non-fantastical things being presented in a very quirky, fantastical way.
But that's why I love that early scene when he tries to see the tiger.
Yes.
I think it works because you might watch that scene and be like, what is this kid, a moron? Like he thinks he can just hang out with a tiger? But like because everything's been so like light and fairy tale in a lot of ways,
kills the whimsy pretty fast in a way that presents an interesting contrast.
Yeah, and you've had the scene where he does pie on all the chalkboards, which also seems sort of like vaguely supernatural, like like these things that are
right. I remember this was
heightened.
The discussion that I remember him asking the audience in the test screening was like, were you picking up on the fact that all that stuff in the beginning was lies?
Yeah.
That none of that happened. Like that's supposed to be the tell that he's an unreliable narrator.
Right. That it's all too ludicrous to understand.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Even just in the way it's visualized and everything. And I look at like these opening like sections and even like the background actors feel much bigger than any Ang Lee movie. You know, they're all in this very heightened state. There's the shot of like the two women riding by on the bicycle and they're just like too joyous. For a guy who's so into like very specific body language, it's like the note is just like, be happy. You're in a big movie. You know?
You feel like Taking Woodstock is more naturalistic performance-wise than this?
I do.
Okay, interesting.
I do. I don't think it's entirely successful performance-wise. I mean, you're obviously the best performance in Taking Woodstock.
Thank you so much.
And I think we said that extensively on the episode.
Do you know what scene I'm in?
I don't think so.
The big crazy tracking
I'm at the
shot, right?
very end of the tracking shot.
Yeah. I mean,
that was terrifying.
That's fun though.
Oh my God. That must have been terrifying because it's like everything has to go perfectly up until you, and you're the one who can blow the tape.
Yes. And the secret of Taking Woodstock is that every single person, no matter what they're dressed as, was a part of a casting call for hippies.
Yeah.
So those nuns are just like ladies from New Paltz who are super stoned and are blowing it every single time.
Yeah.
These kids showed up with long hair and they were like well, we need some Hasids. And they shaved their heads, except for the payas.
That's crazy.
Yeah. That's really funny.
No, I think taking Woodstock is all over the place. Like there is. I mean, this is one of the issues of the movie is that there isn't a clear sort of a tone to the performances, which usually he's good at getting his entire cast on the same page.
Super good.
Some people are super big in it. Some people are super small in it. This is the first time I'm seeing him make a movie where like everyone's at a heightened level, you know, where it's clearly working in like a fantasy, non-literal realm.
Sure.
But I at this point have no idea what the fuck the movie is.
So we learn about Pi, Piscine, Molito, and Motel, and his relationship with God and his family.
Right, and then they spotlight. Right, he practices 3 religions. His relationship with God is very non-literal. It's trying to get closer to this man rather than practicing any sort of doctrine or any sort of dogma or anything like that.
And this is a lot of the book. Like the movie pares it down.
It's kind of the book is sort of like a third, all of giving equal page count.
It's been a while since I read it, but yeah.
And then it introduces this character that they created that's not in the book, who's his love interest, the dancer he recognizes. And they like circle her, underline it, put it in bold, like then I met her.
Right.
Where it feels like, okay, so this is clearly going to be the main thrust of the movie now.
Not at all.
Not at all.
Forget it. Also, Taboo plays his mother. She's this like extraordinarily famous actress.
Yeah, she fucking rules.
Like that's, I feel like for some audiences is just, that's the actress where you're like, oh my God, like she's playing this like his mom. Like she's just in the movie. Yeah. Right. Anyway, carry on. Sorry.
But he said he put her in there because he wanted a sense of what he was losing when he got the boat.
Yes.
Whereas everything in the book is sort of this is the grounding before he gets on the boat and then his life hits this new chapter. He wanted a sense of something that was like incomplete. Right. You know? That he lost behind. It takes until minute 40 for him to the storm to start.
Can I just get into like what I think about the open? I think the really, as I've gone through it this morning, the way this film like teaches you how to watch it is astoundingly good. Yeah. You know, and I think that the deployment of the different spectacle is like it stays constantly surprising you and like let me just get in. So it's like the opening, it's like that sloth shot. Right?
Yeah. I love the fucking opening.
The opening credits with
probably my favorite part of the movie.
With the animals is wonderful.
It's so important. That opening credit sequence is like a video game orientation UX kind of like you're like, are you all set? Are you ready to go? And like, and I think
it's like your load screen. Yeah.
The film takes you through a series of airlocks basically to get to the point where you are really paying attention. I remember the opening 5 minutes of Avatar were rocky.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like really funky, cutting from like the canopy jungle to like the eyes with the parallax and then the exterior. It's like a mess.
And if you watch the extended version where there's like 20 minutes of stuff on Earth before that, it's bad. Like it's actively bad. It's clear that he wrote this whole opening that didn't fucking work. And then it's this rocky, like, you know what? Let's just like as inelegantly as possible get through this shit fast. Whereas this movie's really like setting you into a mindset.
And I just think that the way that the different like hammers fall and as they're introducing you to different things about this movie, like up into like the uncle is great.
Yeah.
When he shows up with that weird body, it's great. But then I was just going through the things that happen in this, these series of shots where then it's like there's this crazy Dutch shot of these people on this balcony. And then
even all of this stuff looks like the fantasy sequence in Sweeney Todd. Right.
And then somebody just flies. Why aren't they not just flying?
Yeah.
You know, like through the foreground, and then he happy feets in the background like that.
That's the other thing. He's doing like crazy transitions in this movie. He's doing some of the Speed Racer stuff where you're literally like collaging images
weird overlapping.
This is just a shot of a man flying.
Yeah.
I love that shot.
Check this out. She goes above him. How high is she supposed to be? Like what?
Yeah.
Anytime he does the sky
guy in the pool with the sky above him,
the reflection of the sky on the water, I like lose it in this movie.
But this is a huge moment for the audience. Like the audience, like if you've ever seen like a shorts program, every film starts and the audience is like,
until
like, how much are these people going to hurt me? And then there's like it's usually like a first laugh.
Yeah.
Or something where you go like, okay, that was a directing choice of quality enough that I will relax and let these people take me.
I think choice is the key word. When you see someone who clearly is like doing something specific and it's like, I can trust them because they know what they're doing. They haven't lost control of this thing, whether or not I like it. I remember being actively against the first 40 minutes when I first saw it.
Okay.
I think a lot of that had to do with me having no sense of what this movie was.
Where's the boat? Why? What are we doing with this? And the thing you're saying, where
and
it's
I'm also like,
why am I meeting his love interest when she's not going to return? Like,
and all I just remember was the one sentence synopsis every time a director I like signed on to this movie that like it's a kid in a boat with a tiger, and I'm going like, is my memory faulty? Is that not what this movie's about? So I'm confused by it. And I'm also just thrown off without having seen any sort of promotional material, any clips or anything, by just this movie being so aesthetically and tonally different than any Ang Lee film I've ever seen. I later come to realize, I saw it in theaters in 3D when it was released, watched again 2D last night. Of course, what you're saying is he's teaching you how to watch the movie. He's setting you into a world.
Call. Yeah.
He's inviting you into like the home.
And I'd also say that the way this movie is described is a lie. It's not a movie about a kid on a boat with a tiger. No. That doesn't and they know that, and they're trying to make it everything but that, basically.
Right.
There's more than one boat.
Yes.
The boat keeps changing.
Yeah.
There's not just a tiger. There's a monkey and a zebra and a hyena.
Right.
There's like it until you finally get to the shot where it's like, okay, now I'm looking at a boy and a tiger on a boat, and they're like squaring off, and then it just stays in that shot, and you're like, okay, now we're at like the boxing match, basically.
Right, and now it's like, at that point, it's like an hour into the movie.
Absolutely.
You know? In a movie where I always think of this movie as being like 2:30 plus, and it's actually a tight 2 hours.
It's a little over 2 hours.
It's like
2 hours, 7 minutes.
Okay.
It moves, though. Everything keeps changing. I mean, this is also a thing of like, I worked on a movie that had a lot of scenes of like spaceships, exterior shots of spaceships going through outer space, and it was like...
Star Wars?
Yes, Star Wars.
Episode 4, New Hope.
I do want to...
Familiar with it, yes.
And the thing was like, if we do this literally, every single shot will look exactly the same. Mm-hmm. But we need to make a progression. So like this movie, if you did it literally, could be incredibly visually monotonous. But like the ocean is a million different colors. There's a million different, like it's almost like he's going through train stations.
Yeah.
You're like, now I'm in this scene, now I'm in that scene. The boat keeps changing. His body keeps changing.
Yes. And also, like because once he gets to the boat, I mean, Ang Lee's whole pitch was like, it has to become like an adventure film at that point. The survival has to be, I need to put a little more emphasis on the series of sort of challenges and tests that this guy goes through rather than just the internal spiritual journey.
Right, but I feel like he's not interested in making like In the Heart of the Sea or one of those movies that's about just like the human body enduring its greatest tests, and or
even the
visceral.
Shallows. But it also it is process based. It's very much about this kid learning, which I love any process movie.
Mm-hmm. You know, in Apollo 13 when they have to make the filter out of just the stuff.
Of course, you got to put the square peg in the round hole.
Best sequence,
the best shit.
But the craziest thing about that is that it actually happened, and that's the craziest thing in the fucking world. That NASA had to be like, why does that tank not? You have that and this. Why are they not compatible? And it's like, well, all right, well, they have this shit. We have to make a box that it goes through. Like, it's still, I love it so much.
Apollo 13, a masterful screenplay written by
Akiva Goldsman,
John Sayles.
John Sayles wrote Apollo 13?
Absolutely.
How did I not know
like
that?
hell for the credit and didn't get it.
I believe he did not
get it. Crazy.
That is
okay, so that's why I didn't know that.
100% a movie written by John
because
Sayles.
it's credited to Broyles Jr., who's like one of those guys who's got a lot of credits. And then Al Reiner, who only wrote Apollo 13 and wrote For All Mankind, the space documentary.
Yeah.
So like, whatever.
John Sayles had that run from like 90 to like early 2000 where he was just like quietly one of the best studio like script doctor punch up guys.
Right. And then he writes the notorious Jurassic Park 4 script.
Right. Yeah. Which sounds fucking amazing and I still wish was
the
made.
ideas of which are still being parceled out.
Yeah, that's what's crazy is they've used them in all the other ones.
I know, but when you read that script, you're like, it's like, and you like read those interviews with Spielberg where he's like, and now we know what the movie looks like. We've got the story. And you're like, you thought that was definitely the story?
I love it so much.
Human
because I just
raptor hybrids with guns?
If you haven't gotten to that point where you feel comfortable doing that, then why even make Jurassic sequel?
That's true.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like, just fucking go for it.
His Quick and the Dead script rules.
Really?
That's a good movie. You ever seen it?
I've never seen it.
We got to do Raimi.
I know.
Saddest music in the world and Quick and the Dead are the only films that have bracket structures that I know of.
Oh,
like music in the world's a good
weird.
movie.
Like your bracket structure. It's very satisfying.
Yeah, I just love guys like that who like didn't even view it as like a one for me, one for them thing. Because like John Sayles also came out of Corman. That's the thing. Like he loves just being like writing assignment, fix this, make it better.
I agree, but
read the book by Roger Corman, How I Made 100 Films and Never Lost a Dime. It's the best book ever.
Hey, Ben.
David.
I heard you finally got yourself a mattress.
Yes, I got a Casper mattress because I found an apartment. I have a home.
You have 4 walls and a roof now.
Yes.
And in that space goes a Casper mattress.
Indeed.
How is it going for you?
Oh my God. It's really great. They made the whole process so easy because again, like moving is so a nightmare.
Right.
And Casper, you can just buy online
Yeah.
at your convenience, and it just gets shipped.
Yeah, it's
To
it's
your-
in a box.
Yeah, what the?
and there's like it's not like a door size.
I'm trying to think of how to describe
Smaller.
it. You know what? There's that
Oh,
in the corner of the studio.
the thing that keeps the water
mini
cold.
fridge, yeah, it's about the size of a
It's
mini
about the
fridge.
size of a mini fridge. That's right, because Casper products are cleverly designed to mimic human curves. They provide support for all kinds of bodies. How's your body? Does it feel supported? Does it feel comforted?
It does.
Well, you spend 1/3 of your life sleeping, so you should be comfortable.
This is true.
So the original Casper mattress, it combines multiple supportive memory foams. It's got a quality sleep surface with just the right amount of sink and bounce, baby. And it's got a breathable design, so you can sleep cool throughout the night.
Now, Casper offers 2 different kinds of mattresses. You
Apart
have-
from they got the original, but then they got
Right.
the Wave
oh, of course.
and the Essential.
I got the Essential.
Okay. That's got like a streamlined design at a price that won't keep you up at night, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. The Wave is the one with the premium support system, patent pending, that mirrors the shape of your body. So there's a lot of options.
They're all designed and developed and assembled in the U.S.
And the affordable prices, it's because Casper cuts out the middleman and just sells it directly to you.
It's free shipping, and returns are also free in the U.S. and Canada.
And if you're not completely satisfied, you can just put it back in its mini fridge box, get it the heck out of there.
We are going to offer our listeners a great deal if you're interested in getting yourself a Casper mattress.
I've got one. Ben's
Oh,
got one.
Yes.
We love our Casper mattresses. They're mattresses. They are comfortable. You sleep on them. It's a great experience. And you can be sure of your purchase with Casper's 100-night risk-free sleep on it trial. So you can get $50 towards select mattresses by visiting casper.com/check and using promo code CHECK at checkout. Terms and conditions apply.
Again, if you want to get $50 towards select mattresses, you can go to casper.com/check and use promo code CHECK at checkout.
Terms and conditions apply. And yeah, I mean, get yourself a good night's sleep like Ben finally can do after weeks of homelessness.
Thank God.
Oh, sorry about that, Ray.
This is actually happening.
It happened. It happened, and I know you're processing it now, and it's tough, but we have to keep talking about the movie. We have to survive. We have to go on. So minute 35, the family dinner, the father announces the intention to move and sell the zoo.
Adil Hussein plays the dad.
Yes.
Sort of a bad zoo boy, if you will.
But no, I think he's a pretty good zoo boy.
Okay.
I think he's a pretty good zoo man.
I don't know, man. He's locking up the zoo and putting it in a boat.
He does lock the gates. That is true. He locks the gates after he sells it.
Yeah.
And
He tranquilizes the banana.
yes. Which I love that too. I love just watching him like cut the banana and put the things inside.
Yeah, and just how loving the narration is about his dad, and how he's realizing his dad is totally a fish out of water as well. He's a businessman, doesn't really know how to deal with these animals.
Yeah.
Like this and how they're all, like that teenage thing where you're like, oh, I'm not the only important person in the world. That sort of like growing realization.
Right.
My parents are flawed people with like their own problems.
Yeah. But he's on the ship for like one day.
Yeah.
Where the only real dramatic thing that happens is a fist fight with Gerard Depardieu, as you know.
Here's one thing I wanted to say.
Yeah.
This movie has Irfan Khan in it.
Yes.
Who is like now older, but certainly at a moment in his career was like a sex symbol in his country.
Sure.
And Gerard Depardieu now aging, but was a sex symbol in his country utterly, right?
Yeah, right.
And Irfan Khan looks pretty great. Like
Yeah.
the hair is a little silly. He's got the sort of big hair in this movie, but he looks pretty great.
Yeah.
And Gerard Depardieu looks like, I don't know, like how
He looks
would
like
you
the lump monster from Wonder Shows.
He looks like fucking Pizza the Hut.
He looks like Muzzy. I mean, I know we make a lot of Muzzy references on this show, but he looks like Muzzy.
He looks like an old crone in like a Hans Christian Andersen movie. I mean, fairy tale.
What's crazy is I remember seeing this, whatever it was, like 7 years ago, right?
Sure.
And being like, Jesus Christ, Gerard Depardieu does not look good. And then watching it now, having seen like
You're
Let the
like, oh, he looks
Sun Shine
pretty
In,
good
I'm
in
like,
this one.
Gerard was looking pretty good.
Right, because in Let the Sunshine In, you'd literally think he's like furniture for a while because he's so massive. You're like, is that a credenza she's talking to?
There's a moment when they first cut to a close-up of Gerard Depardieu at the very end of Let the Sun Shine In, where
He looks
I went
like a rock monster.
I went, wait a second, is this movie in 3D? Because it felt like his nose was coming out of the screen.
I don't mean to mock Gerard Depardieu's, middle age. He's old. He's like 70 years old.
Yeah.
Older.
Yes.
Gait.
Sure.
It's the mileage, though.
Yeah.
But it's crazy.
I don't mean to mock Gerard Depardieu, but let's remember he peed on the carpet in the middle of a plane because he drank too much white wine.
He also keeps
in protest.
Yeah, and he also keeps like moving to increasingly like oppressive countries because he like doesn't like paying taxes, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that a thing of his?
Yeah, but he keeps on making Asterix movies.
Of course. Well, he was. That's the thing. I think he buffed up to play Obelix, and then he just stayed there.
Yes.
And he is Obelix.
Yeah, but I just like that. Like Asterix has changed like 4 times. I think 4 or 5 different
they're
actors.
always
have
like
played.
cycling in a new Asterix, and
Right.
Depardieu is ready.
Right. You know what I love about Asterix? He gets younger. Obelix stays the same age.
Jesus. Let's see. When's the last time
That's
he
a
played
reference to
Obelix?
the very successful French live-action Asterix film adaptation series.
He hasn't made one since 2012, where they saved Britannia.
Okay.
Yes. There you go.
Interesting.
Obelix.
So Depardieu comes in, he looks like shit, and he's looking for a fight. This guy's just a fucking ass.
Yeah, he looks like a pile of mashed potatoes, but he's serving rice.
Right. Pouring gravy on top of it. They ask for no gravy because the wife's vegetarian.
And no sausage, and he takes umbrage at this, and there's
the
a
cow
fight.
the veal came from is vegetarian.
Right.
You know,
Yeah,
that and that.
all that.
Gets into a fight. A very sort of centered sailor comes, breaks it up, sits down next to them, explains to them like,
Yeah, and I don't think the
somewhat
scene
about-
works without that lovely scene with one of the bits where I like really key into the movie is those silver plates in their dinner.
oh yeah,
You know what
yeah.
I mean? Like that's one of those things where you're looking at it and I'm like, I don't know what that is exactly, but
Yeah.
I know that is correct.
Sure,
And it's incredibly tactile.
Someone's done the research.
Yeah.
Yes.
And like just seeing how lovely their life is, you really do feel bad for this family now that they're being like put through this terrible experience, even before the shipwreck.
yeah.
And then the shipwrecks.
Once again, I remember being very distracted by Depardieu the first time, but now I totally get it that you need someone to make that much of an
That's the
impression
thing.
that
You
quickly.
need that
'Cause
character
he needs to be in the
pop
back of your
because
brain
he's-
for the rest of the film.
He's going to be important,
It's a
right?
great
Even though
point.
you'll never see him again.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, I remember in the cut we saw there was a scene where Pi potentially hallucinates Depardieu coming back onto the boat.
Absolutely.
Right?
Interesting.
And cut out of
Yes.
the film. Where
Interesting.
he like wakes
He
up.
probably
his
thought
vision's
that would like
foggy,
muddy it too much.
And you
like,
see a silhouette of like him coming back with a knife and then Richard
No,
Parker.
you're just thinking of the scenes with the orangutan. Who is Depardieu-esque, even though he's not supposed
He
to
looks like
correspond
him. Yeah.
to the orangutan.
Did they double cast him in this one?
No, you need to
I gotta
remember him.
stop being mean to
I have to-
Gerard.
yeah, I was watching
He's a
this
legend.
just on
And
the
he's
way.
also going to be our guest on next week's episode. Sorry,
Oh,
what were you saying?
bonjour,
Ray?
Blanc-Chuck.
On the way over here, I had forgotten. I watched the last scene like in the cab on the way over here, and it's like it's a murder confession.
Yes.
And I think you remembering how unpleasant this guy is
Mhm.
really makes you go like, okay, I get it. It's like, and you go like, there was a horror for him in murdering someone so evil and so disgusting.
and also like I mean, the movie and the book makes this even clearer. Like he doesn't want to kill anything.
Yeah. Mhm.
And the movie, you see that he's so sad when he has to kill an animal.
Mhm.
But in the because he's a real strict aesthetic sort of
Yes.
vegetarian.
He sees God in everything as well.
because it's truly horrible. He saw his mother get killed by Gerard Depardieu and then had to kill Gerard Depardieu.
Yes.
That's ugly stuff.
We saw a man get eaten.
Eaten.
Do you know the craziest thing I found about this movie on Wikipedia? Or I found this through going to the Wikipedia entry for the book.
Sure.
Is the reason he named the tiger Richard Parker is that there were like 3 different instances of a man named Richard Parker on a lifeboat involving cannibalism.
Jesus.
And one's an Edgar Allan Poe story, and then 2 of them are like real stories.
Right. People just decided to pay homage to Edgar Allan Poe.
all in the 1800s. Yeah, but all 3 guys were named Richard
No,
Parker.
I'm joking. That's crazy.
And he was just like, that has to mean something. If guys named Richard Parker keep on ending up on lifeboats, either being victims
Right.
or adjacent to cannibalism.
A cabin boy
Yes.
in a famous legal case in 1884. Jesus Christ. And then
Isn't
the
this
third
super
Richard
fucking
Parker
weird?
drowned, so his dead body was cannibalized.
Yes.
Very nice. No problem there.
No.
Great
and then
stuff.
the fourth Richard Parker is played by Campbell Scott in The Amazing Spider-Man 2, in which he turns out to be a secret agent.
I forgot that his name's Richard Parker.
Richard Parker. It is kind of a masterstroke of the book and the movie, but I think especially the movie where you're watching the tiger, the fact that he has a full proper gentleman's name,
right,
like a first and last name, helps you like without anthropomorphizing him, it helps you really invest in him as like a real creature.
Yeah.
You know, because if he was named like Claw or something, you'd be like, that's a fucking tiger.
I mean,
Richard Parker, you're like, how do you do?
Tigers are
nice
just,
to see you, sir.
There's some word for them. Let me look it up that people in environmentalism use for animals like tigers and elephants, a charismatic megafauna.
Sure.
Where it's like, these things are so insane and iconic to people that you kind of can't believe that it's real. And that's why you center your environmental campaigns on a tiger, or we have to save the elephants.
Yes.
Like, because people are like, if I saw a tiger, and I have seen tigers in like the zoo or whatever.
Yeah, humble brag.
Yes, I've been to the zoo.
Humble brag.
You are kind of like, oh, right, this is like a functioning creature.
Yes.
And like, you're also looking at, you're like, this is designed to destroy and murder something fast.
Well, and they have this weird intelligence in their eyes that is misplaced.
Yes.
Where you're just like, this is a thing that like gets me. And it's like, no, this is a thing that just wants to eat shit. He's just fucking hangry.
So get ready to say humble brag. I was just in Alaska on vacation.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. You
Okay,
can do
cool.
that. You're allowed. You work very hard.
And when he said that, when the dad says that line about you're just seeing, I was thinking about all the animals I saw in Alaska where, right, you're like, oh, there's so much going on here. And it's like, well, no. I'm reflecting myself a little bit in Alaska.
Did you go to Alaska by yourself?
No, I went with my girlfriend.
Humble brag.
And Richard Lawson.
Double humble brag.
Not for all of it, but for a bit of it. And I saw like a bald eagle, and that's another one where you see that and you're like, oh, all of this creature is all pointy ends. Like, it's all sharp.
Right.
He lives to destroy things.
But certain like animals like that just project a certain amount of sophistication.
Otters
it's like that
were the big ones.
moment at the end of Fantastic Mr. Fox where he like sees the wolf in the distance and he's like, I get you.
Yeah,
you know?
Right.
Where you like see an eagle and you're like, dude, I understand. And the eagle's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I want a rat.
Right. The
Where
eagle's
can
like,
I eat a
just
rat?
like the eagle's like, I can see like 2 miles that way,
right,
and there's a rat, and I want to eat it.
Right,
like,
and you just look at the eagle, and you're like, "Man, this country, how do we go so far off track?"
You're like,
right?
America is a flawed but fascinating experiment in democracy. And you see otters. I see otters.
Yeah,
so many otters, and they lay on their backs in the water. And
you
then
see so many otters
in Alaska.
Oh, okay,
not all the time.
Yeah.
And they put little...
Dude, you live in Brooklyn.
They catch crabs and they put them on their tummy and then they just kind of like eat them. And I'm like, I eat crab.
On my tummy?
I will say, I am not a dog person.
Interesting. Okay.
But I've had, any of you had like a really important relationship with any cats in your life?
My dresser kittens.
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
So
I'm a dog person.
Yeah, because I'm not a cat person historically. I don't like them.
I'm a cat person.
If you have anything,
pig,
this film will play on like, and there's certain moments, like especially when he's thinking of whether to kill him with a hatchet. I swear to God, they make the water pull back his face in the exact same way when you're petting your cat's face.
Yeah,
that's what their mouth does. There's like a lot of stuff I think where they're like, if you have that in you, they really play on your heartstrings.
I also think like I've never owned a pet.
Yeah.
But my father has 2 dogs that he calls the boys.
No.
That's, by the way, how he got himself into financial trouble. Each of them cost $2.5 million. And they only eat quail eggs. But he calls these dogs the boys, and I will dog sit when my whole family goes away because my family goes on vacations without me.
All the time.
By my choice. And when I'm with the dogs, I find myself talking to them a lot. And forming these very odd, intellectual relationships with how I think they're processing things. In the same way I did when I found these, cats at 2:00 in the morning. And I'm, having conversations with them.
Right.
And I think this movie gets at that kind of thing, especially if you don't, have a natural, casual relationship with an animal. Of just, if you're with an animal isolated for that long, or a period of time that is high stress, you just start to be I need to feel like I'm relating to something else, that I'm not just here by myself.
And that's so much of what sustains Pi, right? Is that,
yes.
That's what he says about Richard Parker.
Right.
I felt like there was someone else with me that I had to keep an eye on and almost take care of.
And that he says that kind of
and I had
saves
to be alert.
him. Right.
It saves him.
Right.
Yeah.
It gives him something to live for and a challenge every day to work on. My favorite thing which Ray, you alerted me to, is that because they didn't want to make his like survival tactics look too professional, because he's not a kid who's like equipped for this circumstance. Do you know about this, David?
No.
Ang Lee asked his son, like, here are a bunch of oars and like a life vest. What would you make out of this?
Okay.
And his son, who's like not a survival expert, made the thing that the kid made, and then he like gave it to the art department and was like, replicate this.
Wow.
Like a lot of the tactics he uses are things that he asked his son, who is like not an outdoorsman.
Right. But he was just kind of like, well,
yeah, you got 10 minutes. Here you go.
I guess this is your base, and then the oars kind of
rather
like
than have someone
out.
production design it. You know?
And I think that's some of the best, coolest stuff is the different rafts and the progression.
The triangle thing is amazing.
It was a collaboration because they just made him go in the pool and just tie these things together. And he said he was very bad at tying knots.
Yeah.
Sure.
And all that stuff. But then what they did for the punch up on all that design was they got their shipwreck survival consultant. Remember this guy's name? It was in all the books or some of the stuff. I'll find his name in a second. But basically, there was a guy who survived for 2 months on the open sea who was on set every day and like a huge part of the pre-production.
Jesus
and
Christ.
was just like, seems like a pretty rangy guy. You know, like there's like a subtext in the book of like, that he needs to like calm down a couple, like because he's very, he's maybe still a little out there.
Maybe understandably, you never get over something like that. It changes you permanently.
Certainly, especially when you're recreating it.
Like that's the most Hollywood thing in this movie is that like Pie's like pretty well balanced. You know?
Yeah.
That he like kind of figured it out.
But I mean, I think that that's part of the what's the fuck, Jesus, narrator, unreliable narrator thing.
Yes,
where like. For one, you sort of start to realize, like, well, I can't really trust the picture he's painting for me, but I understand why he's doing it. And then two, it's like he gets dumped on the beach at the end of the movie, and then at the end of the movie, you see his family come home.
Yes,
and you're like, so he has figured it out, but you're also like, but there is like 30 years here, that are unspoken. And like, who knows, like how you feel that guy.
Sure. Also, my big takeaway from the movie is that he makes this story because that's the only way he can like process this thing and be sane and move on.
It's too painful.
Yes. That was another thing I remembered from the cut we saw is you never saw the family. It cut before they walked in the door from him just referencing them.
Oh, interesting. Sure.
And everyone was like, I kind of want to see the wife. Because we kept on wondering
if he ended up marrying the lady from India. Yeah.
When you don't see her, you wonder if that's like the super pat kind of like full circle thing that they were aiming for.
It's not.
Oh, I do too. But if you don't see her, you wonder if that's what they were trying to set up.
I just circle back. I think that the design of that thing, when they got that guy to do punch up, what's genius about it is that all that design is a collaboration between someone who is Pie at the beginning of the journey and Pie at the end.
Yeah, that's cool.
Which is really cool.
Because I like when he sort of starts putting like slats on it too. He's got like some flooring.
Neither of which are production designers.
Yeah.
So cool.
Right. That's what's really cool about it.
Can we talk about that color of the inside of the boat though?
Oh, sure.
I'd pay money just to see that color. Don't you think?
Talk to me.
It's just wonder. I mean, just the fact that you get to spend so much of the film looking at that color is just a joy.
I will say my favorite stuff in this movie is when he gets like very surreal with the colors of the sky.
Yeah, that's what I think of the sky, especially. Yeah. Obviously, the whale scene.
There's that section where it's sort of like magic hour sundown, and it's like all orange.
You like that red sort of like, yeah.
It could be so many different things, and that one is it looks so good against the blue, and it just is like
that shot is obviously kind of extraordinary.
Why'd they crop it like that?
I don't know.
That's crazy.
Google images.
There's the one that's interrupted by the can. You know what I'm saying?
Oh,
Where you think you're watching. Yeah. Like, I just love that shit. I will say, like, we were talking about the ways in which the effects have and haven't held up. And, I think Richard Parker's pretty impeccable.
Pretty good.
I think
some of the, basically 90%.
And performance-wise, it's like incredible.
Yes.
You just totally fucking buy it, and you buy into it as a character with emotions and all of that. I think some of the sort of environmental stuff, when it's not that heightened and stylized, feels very like plasticky to me. When they're going from just like, this is just the sky and the water, it feels a little like too cartoony for me. I prefer when they push it into that more abstract zone, you know?
Okay.
And I think it also like works with the journey he's on more when it just starts to feel like he's going through like, you know,
psychological space.
Yeah. Yeah.
The toughest stuff they've got is the tiger being wet anyway. That's the only thing I'm thinking of.
It looks
so
funky.
Hard. It doesn't look funky. It looks fine.
I think one of the most audacious things is that first real close up of the tiger that they do that I think is CGI. I'm not sure.
I think it is. I know what you're talking about.
they cut from a quivering, like, Svankmajer piece of meat.
Yeah.
Like, in 3D right up next to you. And so this is real meat. And then they
Right.
show you their CG close-up of the tiger and go, like, look, I will put my art next to that on the wall. And
That
I
was
think
the
it holds up.
big
It's
thing he
very
said
brave.
was like he went to Rhythm and Hughes, the visual effects company, and said like, I'm going to put real animals in this movie.
Right.
And they need to work seamlessly side by side with CGI animals.
Right.
Which is like a big ask.
I don't even know if it's an ask as much as
It's a man.
boxing them in.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Right. This
Like,
is what
really.
you're going to have to do.
Yeah.
Right. This is the standard I'm holding you to.
Because I've directed, projects that the effects were done by MPC that did all like the environments on this. And like, I definitely have worked with a lot of different animation studios and effects studios. And there's always this moment where you're like, I need you to do this extra 15%. And they're
Yeah.
like, we're done working.
It's impossible.
And
yeah.
I think that one of the master strokes was that he boxed them in.
Yeah.
Like they didn't have an out.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we kind of brushed over the initial, like, hyena orangutan.
Did we just skip the shipwreck?
Oh, yeah. Because the fucking shipwreck's incredible.
That's yeah.
Okay, let's talk about the shipwreck more. Okay.
That's when I, like, started going, like, okay, I see what he's doing here. Like,
the
here's a
shipwreck's great. It's
clear,
great.
like, turning point in the movie.
Okay.
Where he's, like, upending everything.
Yes.
The dynamic ups and downs of that sequence, if you go through and do like the Robert McKee, like for
Yeah.
every good thing, then it has to be followed by a bad thing, followed by a good thing, followed by a bad. It's like him seeing that red light and being like, okay, I'm good. And then looking at the guys. And when the guys get washed overboard,
Mhm.
like that's what it looks like in real life when bad stuff happens.
Yeah.
That little flashlight going out into the ocean is so scary. And then the framing, I was going through it like frame by frame. When he runs down the stairs, you don't see that the bottom floor is flooded until you hear him scream like an animal.
Mhm.
And then he jumps, and when he lands in the water, then you realize you're underwater. And that's when the zebra shows up. And
That's-
I think that
that's
zebra
the
is
shot
the
of-
whole movie.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
That's the like opening the doors to the Wizard of Oz. That's the
Right.
moment where, and I love that if you go back and listen to that scream, it's so painful to listen to. And it's at the exact moment that he kind of like maxes out all his levels on just terror and trauma that the magic starts.
Well,
Right.
yeah, and the zebra thing is like so kind of absurd as an image in the middle of a sequence that is like so upsetting viscerally,
Yeah.
you know? But I think it's just like really, really well done shipwreck stuff.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I like the shot of the boat going in the water the best. I think I might just be burned in my brain because it was in the trailer. Like
Sure.
I think they just know how visceral that feels. The shot of it like slamming.
Yeah.
Trying to think of something else from the shipwreck. I mean, I like that shot of the.
Where he's hovering.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
that
I
is
like the
amazing.
idea that it goes into the Mariana Trench, and James Cameron could do a follow-up movie about what's going on down there.
Pies of the Deep.
Yeah, the shipwreck. I don't know what the boat's called.
But yeah, I mean, he's fighting to get on. I mean, he
It's
wants.
called the Sim.
Yeah, it's the Sim.
Is it?
It's the Sim baby.
All right.
David David L. Simsum. But yeah, I mean, he doesn't want to get on the lifeboat because he wants to save his family. They throw him in
Yeah, no, I know. Yeah.
with Depardieu, the sailor, right? And then the animals sort of get thrown into. I mean, it's just like chaos, and then he wakes up in this boat situation with this collection of animals. Where like this happens very quickly. Is it this fast in the book?
Pretty much.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
No, I was just curious if in the book there's more stuff of him with like all the animals.
Oh, I guess so, but I think the degradation
Sure.
happens sort of one by right, where it's like, and the same idea that like he thinks Richard Parker is gone because he saw Richard Parker in the water,
Right.
and then there's that moment, and it's good in the movie when Richard Parker suddenly like leaps out,
Yeah, he's been hiding
kills
under
the
the tarp the whole
hyena,
time.
drags it under the tarp,
Right, which is pretty much like
and you're
a
like, oh,
great train robbery, like direct to camera 3D shot of like the tiger leaping at you.
Can I
It
make
was
a
pretty
Black
great.
Panther comparison too?
Please.
Okay, I'd say
Sure.
that this whole section where you're like, the problem is the hyena
Uh-huh.
is like that waterfall fight in Black Panther where he has to defend like the crown against his
Against
challenger.
M'Baku.
Yeah, and
right.
it's you're like, Jesus Christ.
This
he
fucking
barely-
M'Baku
he
guy. It's
barely-
not, couldn't
barely-
get worse than this.
Exactly. And then
Right.
you see like, it's like Michael B. Jordan shows
Yeah.
up and you're like, oh, we are
Yeah.
fucked.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's like wonderful.
Yes.
I love that first waterfall fight scene in Black Panther so much because I mean my argument for why Black Panther is like a genuinely like it's a masterpiece. It's a great movie.
I really need to rewatch it.
Is
yeah.
that at the end of the movie when Denai Guerrera like when Kaluuya is like you would attack
She
me
makes him
to
bow.
defend the
Right,
thing.
right.
And she says, without question, you're like, yeah, because those are the rules of Wakanda, like a country I have no knowledge of that doesn't
Yeah.
exist. It's fantasy.
Yeah.
And like you're so steeped in like all the tradition
What
of the
it
movie.
means. Yeah.
And then so 2 hours later, you're just like, yeah,
We gotta protect this fucking
that's how
place.
it
Are you
works.
kidding me?
Don't you know that? And like that bit when M'Baku's got him,
Yeah.
and he looks like he's gonna have to kill him when he's got M'Baku, at the end of
Yeah.
that fight. And everyone's like, you've done great, but you gotta tap out. Like this is, and you're like, yeah, come on, man. You gotta protect the honor of your tribe, like that I didn't know existed 5 minutes ago, basically.
There's something like very exciting about watching a movie where people are that in love with their country without being zealots.
yes.
Where it's just like, this country's important. It means a lot to them.
Right, and like a lot of Marvel movies are good at that fast world building that
Yeah.
you need to do, but Black Panther's just especially.
It's
good
the only
at
time they make you actually care about the place.
Yeah, 'cause,
like
like-
in the other ones, it's like, okay, this is a cool place.
it. Right, like
Asgard
Asgard,
looks nice,
right?
whatever.
Yeah, that's the thing. I
Who-
mean,
you don't
yeah,
care about it.
not really.
Yeah.
No, I mean, whatever.
Also, it's a people, not a place.
Well, I actually disagree.
I disagree too.
Yeah.
Um,
It's a pretty cool place. It's
It's a
like
pretty cool place.
had like a force field and stuff.
But yeah, I mean, this whole survival chunk of the movie is, the film kind of changes on you in terms of now removing Irfan Khan for a long chunk.
Yes, exactly. You're alone on the boat with these animals, quickly animal. You
Right.
know, the animals do kill each other pretty fast. Or
Right.
the hyena kills the other animal.
Right, and that's him trying to figure out how to cohabitate with Richard Parker,
But even that
with his own
happens
narration in
pretty
his diary.
quickly,
Yes.
and then it's just them. Like, I guess it's like a solid 40 minutes before they reach
then it's
the
a
carnivorous
16-year-old,
island.
17-year-old who had never acted before,
He's good.
carrying an entire movie
He's
with a
good.
CGI tiger.
Right?
Yeah.
He's good.
Yeah, and remember when they gave him so many big parts after this? After he made a giant international blockbuster?
But I do think this is somewhat the curse of being the unknown actor, where they're like,
You're Pi.
yeah, right. Well, you were great in that, but that was clearly just like a fluke, right? Like, Ang Lee, I don't know. Like, you can
I
just
think
sort of dismiss
people
it.
dismissively give Ang Lee a lot of credit, which clearly he did some incredible
Correct.
stuff in preparing with him.
He was in $1 Million Arm. That was his big
know.
follow-up.
He went to NYU undergrad as a filmmaker, and in the summer he goes back to India and is in movies and gets paid a lot of money.
Really?
Do
Absolutely.
you know what,
That's
though?
cool.
Do you know what, though? He's in the regular cast, like, main cast of God Friended Me on ABC this fall.
He's okay.
CBS this fall.
I mean,
CBS.
I like that. I like that.
Yeah.
God friended him. It didn't friend him though. He friended
his friend.
the mayor from
Godfriend is friend.
the mayor show.
He's a really good actor.
Yeah.
No, it's just a very impressive, it sounds like he's doing well. He's filled in life. He has a good career. But the thing that makes me angry is when dumb studio executives fall back on this thing of we can't make a movie with an East Asian lead because none of them are bankable. And then when you have an East Asian led movie that makes fucking $500 million worldwide, they're like, well, but that's just the one thing he can do. They don't let people like this become leading men in blockbusters,
Number one song on Spotify right now is Yellow. You know what I mean?
Is that true?
Yeah.
Because of Crazy Rich
Because of
Asians.
Crazy Rich
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
100%.
And that
Yeah.
whole story of John M. Chu writing to Chris Martin and being like, I know you turned us down.
Yeah.
But I assume the studio just sent a form request or whatever. He's like, but this song is so important and I loved it when I was younger. Did you read about this?
Yes, yeah.
And then immediately they were just like, hey, they gave you the thumbs up. He never replied to him, but he was just like, yeah, sure, whatever.
Yeah.
No, obviously, clearly the song matters to you.
Yeah.
Uh,
No, it's just this couldn't be a more complicated production,
Sure.
If you're, Suraj Sharma, and you come out of this film, you're like, I understand everything about how to be a professional on a set. I've gone through The Ringer. I've done every type of thing. I've worked with effects. I've worked practically,
Do you want to talk about the rehearsals that they did?
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
Yeah.
And I
Do
think
you
this
wanna talk
fits in.
about this?
Well, I just, from my own personal experience being directed
Uh-huh.
by Ang, and
And you did win an Oscar for that performance. So you're able to speak from, right.
I suck in that. I'm the worst part
Not
of that
true.
movie.
Not
for
true.
sure.
Oh, Ray, so untrue.
That's not true.
You
we
joke?
talked about that on the Taking Woodstock episode.
Trust me, we're on the record with many parts of that film that are worse than you.
Yeah, but I'll say your guys' thesis that it's body language stuff is
Yes.
huge. That was the one note I got from him was about the way I was moving my hips.
Interesting.
It
Mm-hmm.
was because I was camera operating, and when I camera operate, I tend to kind of shift a little bit, give a little parallax. Keeps me in the moment. And he was like, "No, you just got to plant there your nodal point, And that was like the only thing we really talked about was just my body stuff. And what do you want to take?
No, I think he's very aware of things like that, where it's like, that's just you being natural. It's you doing your muscle memory of how you feel when you operate a camera. But he's so aware of what body language communicates and how it could like send the wrong message in terms of the story he's
What
trying
about
to
the
tell.
rehearsals for this movie?
He like worked with him for like weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, if not months, just having him walk around a room and being like, we're going to work on when you were 7. Walk like when you were 7. Think about when you were 7, and just spending time like acting exercise into all of that, so that for a movie where the kid has to go through all these different stages of like his body decomposing, him gaining maturity, survival, when he's broken, when he's stronger, all these kinds of things, that he gave him this sense of the history of how his body has changed and how his mind has changed over time. So then it just sort of became like a thing that was like an automatic response. If he could be like, in this moment, you're sort of humble to how you felt when you were 7. And he's like, I spent 4 hours doing the 7 thing.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And I think it's a thing where, like, you know, when actors talk about, like, oh, I wrote, like, a character biography. I wrote a diary as my character, you know? So that way you have things to fall back on. It, like, helps if you have sort of memories that you've created. It's so much more productive when you have a director who's actually worked with you to be like, let's act out things. So you have a literal memory of what it felt like in your body to do these things, even if it's a fake acting exercise. So if I say when you're 7, you know what that feels like as opposed to like I wrote a fictional story.
Right.
I think it's just good shit.
It's really real shit. Because it's like what I know about directing actors is that you do not use adjectives.
Yes.
You do not talk about the film you're trying to make.
Right.
You give them the information that they need to know
right. So
to
you
actually live in that moment.
What's like a bad adjective? I don't know anything about directing.
If someone says like, this is like your James Bond moment. Okay. You know, or this is kind of the moment where I want you to have like the hero shot where you become badass. You know, I mean, I'm like working a specific way, but where you talk to them about like the end result of what you want the moment to convey in the film as opposed to what they need to be feeling. Right. And sometimes even if it is a technical thing you're trying to get at, it's so much more productive to find the way to trick them into getting there than to tell them like, the end result is I want you to be orange. You know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he said it's almost like he made a data bank of sense memory stuff.
Right.
You know, so he could, and Ang Lee says here in this book, he says, so next time he needs to get to that point, he doesn't need to go through all the psychological memories.
Yeah.
So it's conditioning, like with a tiger on set.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
And like, especially for someone who's never been in a movie before, it just gives them like a really strong base.
Yeah.
You know? My favorite part of the shipwreck section is the flying fish.
New Zealand.
That's a great scene.
Yes. When New Zealand is swimming through the water.
That's wonderful. I mean, I like the whale.
It's weird they cut out his cameo because that was in the earlier cut.
Do you remember? You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Muppet
New
movie.
Zealand from the Muppet Show was in the early cut that we saw.
Throwing the fish.
Flying fish. And then Ang Lee said it was like too distracting. They also had him wearing a Jan Martel wig.
He was also played by Tobey Maguire.
He was played by Tobey Maguire in the Jan Martel wig.
Yeah,
right. But it was New Zealand.
You guys were aware of the aspect, like the
the aspect
stuff?
ratio stuff is so fun.
Yeah.
What's up with that?
No, I just love that. And I think it's a thing that's underused where like he uses the sort of letterboxing to have the fish overlap over the sides of the frame. Which
they
really
did it in
make
the
them feel
Ghostbusters
aggressive.
movie a lot too, where it's just like it's basically popping in the frame. But also, did you look at that talk that the French guy explaining the moving? So Brian Gardner, who's the stereographer on this, like the guy from Coraline, and I would say is like
the best third
one of the like I would say is like Ang Lee, and then number 2 on this movie is Brian Gardner in terms of why this movie is amazing.
Right.
He developed this thing that was it's the proscenium frame is basically on hinges on both sides, and it's coming out like this, it's coming out like that. Sometimes it bends out. There's all this stuff where the screen is basically falling backwards and you don't notice it. There's like a tremendous amount of stuff that is less showy than that.
Very
that is like working
thoughtful, psychologically
incredible.
effective.
Just incredible.
Yeah. I mean, he is one of the few guys, and I said I felt this with Billy Lynn as well in an episode we haven't recorded yet. Definitely haven't recorded yet. That he like really understands using that stereoscopic depth as Jesus Christ, stereoscopic depth as a part of the language. You know, like color or lighting or anything.
And that episode definitely isn't insanely long.
No, it also doesn't definitely go off the rails in the last 30 minutes when we should have ended the episode already.
Correct. And then we just start laughing constantly at God knows what.
Did you guys talk about how his teeth are translucent and his skin is translucent when you see it in high frame rate?
We wouldn't have talked about that because we haven't recorded the episode yet. But also, I forgot about that.
You can see, if you see it the right way, you can see the blood moving through like the veins in the temple.
So
and it's like,
distracting.
He's quite pale. He's a pale man. Yeah. No offense to Joe Alwyn, but he's.
I think there's something there though.
Eventually.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's something there.
Life of Pi, guys. So come on. Is there anything else you want to talk about for the Carnivorous Island and the end of the movie?
There's sort of the big dream sequence, not sequence, but sort of like into his mind.
I like that.
That's what I was saying. Another thing was like describing this movie as a boy on a boat with a tiger is a lie. There's all these other things that happen.
Because now it becomes like a little bit of like a Homer's Odyssey thing where they're going through like individual trials.
There's not a lot of challenges that are relating to the practical challenges of life on a boat with a tiger.
No, because now he sort of fixed it. Now it's just
pretty
these
quickly
different
that
elements.
gets solved.
Right.
I mean, there's the whale disrupts them. You know, there are things.
Yeah.
You know, obviously, there's the moment where he lets the tiger back onto the boat.
Mm-hmm.
It's this sort of like humane / like necessary act. Like even though the tiger's dangerous and hungry,
that's my favorite.
And would have eaten
piece of Richard Parker acting the whole movie is
when he's sort
him
of like
just
vulnerable,
so sort of pathetically clawing at the side of the boat.
That's what it looks like when you pet your cat.
Yeah,
their mouth looks exactly like that.
I love that. But then I mean he gets to this island.
Little pencil.
Do
you like the little pencil? The pencil gets
smaller. I love that.
Oh yeah.
The last time you see him writing, you can't even see the lead. It's like so tiny that he's still scratching out. And they use the tally marks on the side of the boat really well as a way to not have to like tell you how much time it's been, but every time they cut and you see it again, you're just like, Jesus fucking Christ.
Did you read the section of the stuff I sent that was actually about like the board that my mom had on this? Like
no, I can't imagine how hard.
So basically, this is the work that I
Yeah.
think like my mom was the script supervisor on this, but I think that like I recently got into a bind on a project where I was asking for them to hire a script supervisor, and they were just like, "What you're describing is not a script supervisor." And eventually, they just got me hired another director to be my assistant, and it was like, okay, that's like what my mom does basically. And so they had this 20-foot board that was basically like they were charting like the spiritual journey.
Yes.
Like with metrics, they were charting how much Pi is becoming a tiger. Like just a tremendous, everything in this is,
and his physical states are so different.
All of that stuff. Basically, they were like, we are terrified of this thing not moving.
Yeah.
Everything needs to be changing.
There has to be progression.
And what they would do is they would chart it
out
out on this big board, and whenever they would see dead spots, they would go, okay, now we got to put some dynamics in there.
Yeah.
And so it's always like changing color palette. Like there's just a lot of, for a movie about just floating rudderlessly, literally, there's a tremendous amount of like dynamic kind of action going on like 13 different levels.
The thing I just remember really standing out to me watching it without the VFX was that like even without the elements, even in this like environment that is clearly artificial, you're buying into it because he changes the storytelling language for each little section so much that it doesn't become monotonous. It doesn't just become like, here's a kid in the middle of the frame.
Yeah, that's
surrounded by
fear.
water.
When I saw this movie, that is how I felt about the movie.
You thought it got repetitive.
I found it boring, especially once he was on the boat. I think I was uninterested in 3D at the time. I think I was sick of 3D.
Yeah.
Because it's 2011, right? So we're like 2 years into 3D.
This is like, because there was the run for like a couple years where there's that weird thing where like 4 consecutive Best Cinematography Oscars were won by 3D films.
Is that right? 4?
Avatar, Life of Pi, Hugo, and Gravity.
But you're missing 2010 in there.
Okay, so
but something like that.
4 out of 5 consecutive years are won by it, and it felt like once a year a major director steps up to the plate. It feels like the general public is starting to sour on 3D, but once a year someone steps up and it becomes an event. And even if you think you don't like 3D, you have to see Gravity in 3D. You have to see Life of Pi in 3D.
Yeah.
Hugo performed worse out of those, but it was obviously very well regarded.
Yeah.
And then that kind of ends. Like then it stops being like major filmmakers are going to try to make their 3D movie. Like abruptly in a really kind of interesting way. Because it was like proven that on average 3D movies weren't performing as well. But if a major person made one that was like, oh, this is intrinsically tied to the storytelling and they've done the research to make the tech work, it would always do well.
I'm trying to find the last cinematography movie that was even a movie that was even available in 3D.
Right.
Mad Max wasn't, right?
It was.
Okay, so Mad Max. Anyway, I didn't like this movie. I now remember that I was going through an insane like end of relationship close to breakup like time then.
This was like
movie
right
came
before
out,
we met.
2012. Yes.
We became friends because we were both not doing well.
Correct. And perhaps that influenced my like somewhat sort of sour opinion of this movie. Because when I watch it now, I was very taken with it and fond of it. Like maybe not like my favorite Ang Lee, but like...
Your ex at the time also was a Bengal tiger. But this film is a little triggering for you. You have to admit.
That's true.
And you used to live in a little boat.
Did that scene though, where he's saying, "You've
chefs.
taken my family, you've taken everything. What I surrender. What else do you want?" Did that resonate with you at that moment in your life?
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, I mean that's
it's basically word for word a conversation. No, no.
You know what I mean? Like, and I remember in the Q&A too, just being like, he asked me directly, like, "Is this thing working for you?" And I said, like, after that scene, like, this is the greatest movie ever. You know, like I just like it.
Yeah, like full stop love this movie. I think David and I are in similar places where I like it.
I would say
I like it a lot.
Okay, if you've ever had the experience of seeing your like friend's indie band play a show, and you're like, I just like feel so good that they're on stage and they seem really confident and like all this stuff. It's like, imagine going and seeing your friend's band and the band is Life of Pi.
Sure,
you know what I mean? I fucking love this movie. It's like I'm so proud of these people.
And the thing you told me is like, you know, speaking to people who are working on the film and everything, it was constantly like, I don't know if we're going to fucking pull this off.
Yeah.
We might
really
have overreached.
Sure.
This is already a difficult story to tell.
What happened with Billy Lynn?
Yes.
You know?
Billy Lynn is like an overreach, which I think definitely gave him the courage to think that it was worth trying Billy Lynn when he's like 10 years ahead of anyone realistically attempting that. But yeah, so he gets on the carnivorous island.
That's cool. That's just like a D&D adventure.
Yeah, because it kind of feels like maybe like problem solved.
I like that in the book too. Yeah. Right. But also, I just like that idea of like, oh, you've reached paradise, and like
it's filled with Timons.
It's filled with
got Timons for days.
Meerkats. But just like that, you know, like the classic Stranded Man, it would be like, oh, you see a mirage and it's not there, or something, right? You know, but like this is like, no, it's there.
There's a tooth wrapped up.
Is that the beef from Blair Witch Project?
Yes, it definitely is.
Weird, right?
Yeah. Highest paid. Yeah.
Wait, what? What do you? I missed.
They open up it's like the big scary. Nothing scary happens in that movie, except for they open up a package with a tooth in it.
The scariest part of the Blair Witch Project is, well, apart from the ending, is that like that weird package of goo and tooth,
and it's the same tooth. They paid the tooth $2.5. Tooth gets the width in this movie. I don't know if you noticed that tooth gets the width with tooth.
I hope Fallen World sidebar for 1 second.
Please.
The moment that
I have not seen.
I really started to like that movie was when I realized that T-Rex that was in the back of the truck drugged and on Ambien or whatever was the same T-Rex that was chasing the Jeep in the first movie. And I think that Brontosaurus that dies is like the first. I think that those are arcs over movies
that's what they're suggesting
for specific dinosaurs. I think they're going there.
The captain is very into that. He talks about Jurassic World being unforgiven for the T-Rex.
Oh, really?
And that is all I will say about that.
Did you hear the way I just said really, like,
yes,
dismayed?
That is all I will say about that.
Okay.
I like will watch Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom at some point.
You should.
Yeah. I'm more into it when people describe it.
That's kind of how I felt watching it. I do like the first scene though, and I like some of the end. Yeah, I don't know.
The last 3 minutes is pretty cool.
Yeah, but well, we can talk about it. But not today. We're not talking about that today.
So he gets off the carnivorous island, but pretty quickly after that, he ends up on good, normal, safe island.
He does. That's the thing. It's like, you're like, oh man, like he came so close. And then it's like, well, no, actually 5 minutes later in the movie, he makes it. And it's like, I think it's just that idea of we've reached the end of the story.
Right.
We've reached the plausibility breaking point.
He's reached his journey,
when
his relationship
talking about that
with
to the
tiger.
Japanese people, the Japanese insurance agents. They're like, a carnivorous.
Come on. What are you talking about? Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Doesn't this represent some kind of like, you know, like the dream sequence he has in like Passion of the Christ, where he like imagines getting off? It's like, it's the last thing where you almost get distracted from it. You're like, it's like, it's a trap, right?
Right. He almost doesn't make it.
Yeah.
He almost falls prey, succumbs at the last possible moment.
Right. Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah. I also always get really grossed out when he eats that like root.
You don't like vegetables.
It just looks gross. Yeah, it's like
I love
mossy and pink on the inside.
You know, that Richard Parker just walks off.
Yeah, that hits me really fucking hard.
It does, and the Sharma plays it so well.
Yes,
the the emotion, like the crying. Like it's actually hard to do that.
Right.
without
You're like,
seeming-
right, it's just like a fucking tiger. He doesn't have any relationship to me. He doesn't think about like, man, we went through this crazy fucking thing together.
But then I suppose there's metaphorical import to like, it's like his like
doesn't
a
need it
part of
anymore.
him
Yeah,
is gone, right?
right.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
they put a lot of stress in the making of book on this very last shot before it goes to the credits, and they're like, pay attention to it, see what it is, and they really like cue it as like decipher this. I've done what I think I can do. It's basically like a Vertigo type Hitchcock thing where it like extends and then the color drains from it.
Yeah.
And they're like, what is that shot? And it basically is him passing out.
Yeah.
Like the movie ends when he, like the spirit animal he's had to create to survive, he no longer needs it. It disappears and he goes unconscious.
Right. So that's, we've been talking around it, but the twist of this movie is...
Well, we kind of talked about it.
Yeah, it's essentially a dissociative episode.
Right.
Like he creates an alternate identity to be able to win his own survival.
Yeah, it's
through
a
horrifying
narrative.
traumatic means.
Right.
Right.
And it's much like, I guess there's this, you can draw this idea that like, it's kind of like the stories of religion.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because there's those early scenes where he's with the priest where he's like, but why would God send his son and have him suffer for it? Like, that just seems mean.
Yeah.
And all that, like where he's like, what is this story you're telling me? It seems so impossible to empathize with or what,
Well, and what's interesting about it to me is that when he tells the story, it's so much about that initial incident with the cook and the sailor and his mother, which is why I asked if it's longer in the book with the animals. Because when it happens with the animals, it's just like a pretty fast, like 2-minute sort of sequence, right?
Yeah.
And here it's clear when it tells the story that like that was the real thing. And then he doesn't even really tell them about the survival after that in the same kind of way, So this whole rest of the journey that we've been watching is him just fucking coming to terms with what he's done. Less than the actual act,
When I was reading this breakdown that my college professor, Scott Higgins, hi Katie, was... basically breaking down like all the stereoscopic kind of things that they're doing. And they basically say in that last scene where he's giving the kind of confession to the auditors, basically, the investigators, it is like that scene in Fallout where the walls fall backwards.
Yeah.
And where it's just framed on Tom Cruise and you feel that like vertigo thing. Basically, as this is going on, they're taking that animated, like they have a proscenium that they can angle.
Right.
And they drop it backwards. And then extend, like they're doing all this crazy
stuff. So the
stuff.
room sort of gets wider and deeper, and their faces come more and more forward.
You basically are falling up and towards the screen. You get a kind of like a flight of passage, kind of like out of body experience.
That's crazy.
There's a lot of cool stuff. I think this is like worth watching in 3D.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna buy the 3D Blu-ray.
You gotta do it
Since I have the last 3D TV
I
ever
spent
made.
the summer living at Doug Trumbull's house, and he has a great 3D TV. And I have to say, most of this was the movie like True Lies or something, where it's like every day at lunch, he had all these 3D Blu-rays, and we would just always watch, like, let's just watch this, like 25 minutes of Life of Pi with our glasses on. Let's watch this, and just kind of skip around in the movie. It's really, really fun to watch that way. And I find also like 3D movies are often better on smaller screens. You can kind of get a better sense of what they're doing.
I really like 3D. I know
I
you
do too.
hate it, David.
I don't hate it. I just have no interest.
You go like, you do the thing where you throw your arms up.
I do that a lot.
Like the big air puppet outside a used car dealership. That's sort of the Sims move where you're like,
it rarely does much for me. It gives me a headache. I spend so much of my experience being like, okay, I have to hold my head just like this, and now everything looks good. 3D is good with really expensive glasses, and is terrible with 3D real D glasses, which is what they give you.
I just get bummed out that I feel like the lazy 3D, the sort of cash in post conversions, and that sort of like kind of crazed hunger to cash in post Avatar.
It can be good, yeah.
Because I do like the sort of like what we were talking about of like once or twice a year, here's a serious director using it in a very pointed way. And I feel like the glut of sort of just like the sloppy post conversions has soured people on it so much that you don't have people actually like trying to do something pointed with it, using it as a thematic tool.
But I'm also like I say,
because it just like doesn't.
I say in the Billy Lynn episode, I like the window. I'm trying to watch the movie. Like I like looking at a frame. Like that's what I like about cinema.
I'll tell you what I like about 3D.
Okay.
I like that
Is it that like the images sort of like come out of the screen?
Yeah, that was very concise. What I like about it is I don't think it actually reflects reality. I like the stylization of it.
Yeah,
Like watching a 3D movie for me feels like watching a musical. David's doing the arm thing again. where it's just like, this is just like an expressionistic tactic rather than
That's
breaking
used
into
well.
song.
Yes, yeah.
It's like they're using the force of these objects in relation to each other to make you feel things.
And here's, I think, why the movie has to be 3D.
Yeah.
And why Ang Lee figured this out is like, okay, you got to go back to that scene in Pondicherry when you go from the comic book insert that gets so crazy looking, and then it cuts to the shot of someone just like putting a candle on the water. That candle moves out. The whole background's out of focus, and you realize it's actually like a 4,000 person thing that they did. And then
lovely movie.
and like
thinking about the movie right now.
They were talking about shooting that scene. They said there was the entire crew was on set lighting candles, and it was just like there was the moment where they all just bonded forever as a unit.
I just think like ripples in 3D of the water will never stop being captivating.
Right.
Okay, here's what he says: Vishnu sleeps floating on the shoreless cosmic ocean, and we are the stuff of his dreaming. And then he just stops and says, "Spectacle."
That's cool.
You know, and the dad says, "Don't let these stories and pretty lights fool you, boys. Religion is darkness." And I think this movie is like using 3D and spectacle to kind of like, it's like a church. You go into this movie, and it is a spiritual experience,
right?
And he's not sure whether that's safe or not.
And it's
like he's afraid of spiritual experiences that give meaning to chaos. And so the thing needs to have so many exploding socks and so much just kind of like adornment to it, because that's what it's about, the danger of maybe succumbing to believing in the really like Baroque version of what happened.
Also, that sort of stylization and technological like immersement is like getting you into the story in the same way that Rafe Spall is like fully just head in listening to every single detail of this thing.
What I love about Rafe Spall's character is Rafe Spall keeps trying. He's too greedy. You know, I think that scene where he reaches for the bread on the table and then sees that he's praying and gets kind of ashamed, and then Irfan Khan, that line where he goes, "Yeah, let's eat," is like fantastic.
It is.
Yeah.
Like that's like a hinge point for the movie. And what I do like about Rafe Spall's character is he's like a gluttonous like white bastard who's just like, give me the payoff, like I'm here to extract it.
Well, and also, and then he eventually learns to like stop asking questions, and he realizes the story will come as it comes. Like, because when he first mentions the tiger, he's like, "Oh yeah, no, there was a tiger," you know. But there's also that scene very early on where he's like, "I really liked your first book," and he's like, "Oh, thank you. I've been writing the second one." "Oh, is it set in Pondicherry? Is that why you're there?" "No, it's set in Portugal. It's just cheaper in Pondicherry." And he goes like, "Oh," like, and you can tell like he's got a judgment about him, but he just sort of like lets it simmer, and then he doesn't say anything.
Which I remember in the Maguire version, him being like fully sold on the wonder of the story from the get-go. Like he was playing it much more like, "Oh my God, this is amazing. What great luck that I've met this guy." And it felt like they were trying to set him up as more of a traditional, like in a weird way, audience surrogate. Like you're hearing the story through him, whereas like the Rafe Spall stuff in this is still at a distance, where you're watching how the guy processes the story rather than hearing the story through him.
Yeah. In the book,
which I think is smarter.
In the book, I think I remember it being more. They're more fighting about religion. Like it's more of like an
physically
argument. Yeah, they physically fight. He throws them through a window.
Yeah.
And it's crazy.
Yeah,
and then there's like a big like parkour scene where they're like chasing each other around Montreal.
Oh my God.
David threw his headphones, he broke them, and he's now setting the studio on fire. I mean, it was right there.
It was right there. It was right there. But you know, right, so there's like a little more sense of like when he says like, "And so it goes with God," you're like, oh, he's really like convinced him or made a profound argument that he understands is profound.
So the argument with people, I guess, who prefer the book to this is that the book is more ambiguous and sort of putting you in the position of like, which story would you rather believe? Whereas the movie, it feels like, just because I think it's the nature of having people act these things, feels a lot more weighted towards this is a coping mechanism.
Yeah.
Because you have Irfan Khan and you have Suraj Sharma like talking these stories through, and the choices they made as actors make it seem like they're dealing with a tremendous amount of trauma.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think my big like revelation at 7 in the morning as I was walking around my neighborhood was, I was like, okay, so the cool thing about this film is it's like a big tent film. And that's why it works as a 4-quadrant hit, is because you can actually go in and have different experiences.
Yes.
You know, and
it was rated PG.
Yeah, which is crazy.
Yeah.
And instead of like doing what most 4-quadrant films do, where they say like, let's hem in this, let's hem in that, let's like not offend as many people as possible, This one goes like, you can have radically, like if you believe in God, this film goes really hard for you. If you're like raised like a violent atheist, like I am, you watch the film and you go, okay, so this is cool that they tricked religious people into watching this. And then this morning I realized Ang Lee believes in God.
Yes.
For sure.
Yeah, 100%.
And I got tricked.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? This is not like I am an atheist who was tricked into thinking that this movie was on my side.
He also like talks about that like his sense of God is very much just the idea of there being like a power that's tying things together, you know, rather than like following a certain like kind of narrative of like the religious trials of like the development of man and things like that.
But I mean, just in the process of when they describe him making this film, like he was being guided. You know, and there's a lot of stuff where it's like there was a symbol basically on the tiger's head. Like he cast the tiger because there was like a sign on his head. And there's like all these photos of them like praying on set. And you know, it's like, it's really, and when he describes like his process of directing, it's much more like just paying attention to the world and kind of trusting the hand of fate.
Yes.
You know?
Definitely. As you said, a weird 4-quadrant hit.
Very much so. Do you want to play the box office?
Yeah, because you read a lot of press before the movie came out. Everyone was like, that thing's going to fucking flop. Like, even if it does okay, it was so expensive. They're releasing it in Thanksgiving. And then, like, Hurricane Sandy happened. And people were like, it's a fucking storm movie, you know?
Yeah.
Like, but they released a trailer that was just very much sort of like a showcase reel. Like, they'd be like, now an exclusive look at Life of Pi. And it was, I think, the first section. I'm trying to remember what it was. They did one of those things where before 3D movies, they released like an excerpt, almost like
maybe it was the
Dark Knight thing before Iron Legend.
Maybe it was part of the shipwreck or something. I vaguely remember that.
I think it might have been the sequence with the flying fish.
That sounds very plausible.
Yeah.
It also premiered at the New York Film Festival and like got good reviews, and that was like a couple months before it came out. So there was like, you know, but some healthy buzz.
Very much a movie that felt like it could have landed in the middle in terms of not getting rave reviews, not doing great box office, landed weirdly on a static ends of both.
Thanksgiving weekend.
Yes.
2012.
Okay.
Number 1 is the 5th in a franchise and final.
Is it Twilight Breaking Dawn Part 2?
Yes. Which I think we may have discussed in a box office game before.
Which is also the best.
In its second weekend. One day we'll really hash it out about the Twilight movies.
Yes, we will.
Number 2 is all in its third weekend. It's made $221 million. It's the most astonishing hit within a very successful franchise.
So it's the highest grossing?
I believe so. I don't believe so. I know so.
Oh, is it Skyfall?
Skyfall.
Yeah.
The 23rd Bond movie, I believe.
Far and away the biggest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like one of those things where Bond had always done well.
There was a ceiling, though, to
but
how
it
they
made
performed.
$1 billion.
Yeah.
And like that was like, oh, what? Like that doesn't usually. You know.
Also known as jellyfish reflection to me. That's all I care about.
This was a big year for like jellyfish in movies.
Love those moon jellies.
Because everyone got scared off after 7 pounds, and then this year, like Ang Lee, Sam Mendes are like, I'm bringing jellyfish back, baby.
Speaking of 7 pounds, the After Earth Gemini Man comparison is going to be so fantastic because instead of making Jaden into little Will Smith,
it's little Will Smith. It's Will Smith fighting little Will Smith,
and I'm so excited.
I hope they dress him like the Fresh Prince.
I hope it's good.
It's going to be amazing. I mean, here's the thing I would say as like being a kid that grew up as like a family friend of Ang Lee, every single time he's decided to make a film, it's been baffling. You know what I mean? So it's like,
you're like, what? Really?
Yeah, because my mom worked on Ice Storm, and then it's like, what's Ang doing? So Ang is making a Kung Fu movie.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Like Ang's making Hulk.
Okay.
It's a cowboy. It's a gay cowboy. Right. These all sound banana. It's a movie about
like lateral moves.
Yeah, a movie about someone having a panic attack in the middle of a Destiny's Child. It's just like
insane.
Yeah, so it's like when I hear like, okay, it's like it's a Will Smith film where it's like basically Looper.
Yeah,
right.
You know,
except he's playing both parts.
But I think the idea that's so amazing about it is just that like Will Smith as a young man did not get those opportunities to like give like a phenomenal performance.
Sure.
Until and also here, okay, my big theory is that all the stuff that Will Smith has been doing on Instagram is similar to what he did with this actor, where he's becoming young again, actually, through sense memory.
Oh, that's kind of
Will Smith.
Don't you think?
Will Smith on Instagram has been adorable.
He's been
because
really great,
he's young again.
Interesting.
He's training himself to be young again, and that's what we're seeing. And if that energy is going into this movie,
and I'll say,
like, it's the first time Will Smith's working with a really big, important, smart director in a while.
Sounds like Michael Mann, arguably, right?
I want to look at his filmography just to make sure I'm not like dissing someone. But like, and like, no offense to David Ayer,
Sure,
or Akiva Goldsman,
right?
but like, I mean, do you count M. Night Shyamalan? Because if not,
At that point, he's like, that's a bronze star.
But also,
like,
if not, you kind of got to go back to basically like either Alex Proyas if you buy that, or Michael Mann.
What were you gonna say?
Oh, I just think that M. Night Shyamalan coming off of like both of these things, I think like they're signing on to Will Smith projects, like Will Smith generated projects,
which is very interesting and makes sense in like a post Billy Lynn climate. But I'm very curious to see what that movie looks like.
Very,
but
curious.
I mean, what you were saying about like every project he signs on to sounding like just completely confusing. I've been watching these movies, a lot of them with the lady I've been dating, Humblebrag, and like once every 20 minutes.
I should have said Humblebrag.
Yeah, I'm calling my own Humblebrag.
No, you say it. Say it again.
I've been watching a lot of these movies with the lady that I've been dating, Humblebrag.
Humblebrag. Fucking Humblebrag. He roasts me so much for daring.
I'm
to
very
have
proud
a
of you,
girlfriend.
actually. I think this is great stuff.
Thank you. But she, like, every 20 minutes during whatever movie we're watching, will just go like, wait a second, Ang Lee's career is fucking crazy.
Sure.
Like, she just, in response to random scenes from movies, will be like, how is this the same guy that made that thing?
It's true, especially when you watch them all at once. This has been a really fun miniseries for that exact reason.
Remind me what the one before this is and the one after this is, and she just goes like, that's insane.
It's just why I wanted to do them, because it's that thing of like the genres switch, that they toggle so crazily.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, I was talking to her about Hulk, and she was like, so what does he make after Hulk? And I'm like, Brokeback. And she was like, what did he make before that? I was like, Crouching Tiger.
And I honestly think it's like there's a lot of directors. It's like the Werner Herzog model, where you're like, look at that thing up on the mountain. I'm going to go run up there as fast as I can, and then I will prove to you that life can be like this.
Yeah,
that is not what he does. He's not a crazy. He's not like an arrogant person. I think he's actually a person who is just reacting to the world.
Yeah,
taking his cues from it. And like if I talk to him on the set of Billy Lynn about what he's doing, I genuinely get the impression that it's his understanding that this was the only rational path forward.
Which is great.
Seriously.
But that's part of his
why it's
skill as an artist, right? Is that he's resolute about the things he does.
And also, it's like, if you read the stuff I sent you about like the backstory of him, actually, the whole thing of like, oh, he wanted to be an actor.
Right.
But it was like, it's many steps before that. It's like, he basically was Mikey from the Ice Storm. The way he describes himself as a kid. Just like, he's like, I was spaced out, I was brooding. My entire childhood was
only went to art school because he couldn't get into any other
couldn't
school.
get into the military.
Right.
Failed the military test.
Right.
And then got sent to the art academy, which is basically like LaGuardia High School. It's just like, hide these kids here.
Right.
You know? So they don't get beat up.
But he was just sort of guided through the universe. Yeah.
And then in that, he's like, can't do theater stuff because it's so verbal.
Yeah.
And then goes to film school and goes, this is bullshit. Like, I've fucked up my life. And then he realizes that on his first Sight and Sound thing, people are listening to him for the first time in his life.
Yeah.
And he said, like, I was actually the first time that people listened. And he said, I did it because it was really easy and because people listened to me for the first time. And I've been directing ever since.
It's crazy.
You know, and I honestly think his career is it's all real.
Seems very
But it's
nice.
like, this was as wild and as ambitious as these films are, I think they're all him being like, I think this is the path of least resistance.
Yes.
And I'm a good, responsible person. Like, this was my only choice.
That's
this
what
is the only
feels
choice
crazy about them is like his filmography. If you look at it, I think we've said this before, is it feels like he's like a 1940s studio system guy where they're like, here's the new movie we're assigning you. Like, it looks like the filmography of a guy who doesn't choose what films he makes because they're so varied and all over the place. That's like Howard Hawks. Now you got to do a screwball. Now you got to do a Western, you know, except it's very deliberate. And it's just him oscillating between all these weird different modes.
So number 3
oh, wow.
at the box office.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. I want to do that. I thought it'd be funny. Is one of the other Best Picture nominees. We already discussed it.
Argo?
Nope. Argo is number 10.
Silver Linings Playbook?
Nope. Silver Linings Playbook is number 9. They're all in there.
Lincoln.
Lincoln.
Old Blade Lincoln. What's it up to at this point?
62 million in 3 weeks.
It's going to make another
it's growing. It's expanding.
$120 million.
Another A.V. Kaufman masterpiece.
Now, Life of Pi is number 5 with only 30 million in its opening weekend.
Yeah, I mean, but Thanksgiving is one of those weekends where you can have like multiple films open well.
Eat.
Yeah.
But number 4, also opening this weekend.
Yeah, because even after that weekend, that would not have given Fox confidence they were going to make a profit on this film.
I don't know. Yeah. It's an animated film, number 4.
Number 4 is an animated film. Is it Hotel Transylvania?
Correct. Incorrect.
What?
Incorrect.
Is it Wreck-It Ralph?
Nope. That's number 6.
Fuck. Is it a DreamWorks?
Yes, it is a DreamWorks.
But you hesitated, so it wasn't an obvious DreamWorks.
I barely remember the existence of this movie. I feel like you have some take where you're like, no, it's not bad.
Oh, yeah. This is the best DreamWorks movie of the last 10 years.
Oh, God, wait.
Rise of the Guardians?
Yeah, you think this is good?
God.
Yeah, fucks.
It's okay, talk about an unfilmable concept. They can't show. It's a movie about owls that tear each other's bodies
you're
apart.
thinking
That's
of
Legend of the Guardian.
What am I
The
thinking
Owls
of?
of Ga'Hoole, directed by
Okay.
Zack Snyder.
Sorry.
This is Legend of the Guardians.
No, that's Legend of the Guardian.
Oh, this is Rise
This
of the
is
Guardians?
Rise of the Guardian. I mean, it's
Jesus
clear that
Christ.
people do not remember.
Excuse me.
Rise of the Guardians is the one where like Santa and like Hitler unite or whatever.
It's, it's the Avengers of children's imagination. It's
So,
Easter Bunny, Sandman, fucking Tooth Fairy,
Desecration.
Russian Mafia Santa Claus played by Alec Baldwin. It fucking rules. Chris Pine is Jack Frost. He's a very handsome boy, and they fight nightmares.
Well, it made
It's an elegant movie based off a William Joyce story.
Okay, that sounds
it
good.
made $32 million at the box office.
Underperforming, and it's a crime.
It made $300 million worldwide.
Should have made $300 billion worldwide.
That'd be a lot.
I insist that everyone rent Rise of the Guardians now.
You've also got Red Dawn, the remake of Red Dawn.
Doesn't exist, never happened.
Really doesn't exist.
That movie was made with China as the enemy rather than Russia, and then the Chinese box office grew so much that they digitally changed it to North Korea.
I did know.
Do you know about what happened to Ghostbusters Answer the Call?
No, because ghosts
Ancestor
are
worship.
illegal.
Ancestor
Yeah.
worship.
Ghosts are illegal in China.
I'm aware.
Can you imagine? All 4 of those characters being like, we're going to beat up your grandma.
Yeah, they are afraid of some ghosts in the people's mainland of China.
Taken 2.
People's mainland of China. Jesus Christ. Yeah. Taken
Yeah.
to one of the greatest premises in one of the most mediocre movies.
Okay. That's the box office. It did very well, as we said.
Do you
It made
remember
like
the
600
premise
million.
of Taken 2?
No.
Every-
It's that all the people he killed in Taken 1 are mad at him. All the henchmen.
All
They've
the
united.
henchmen were related to one guy who's like, he killed all of my nephews. All 200 nephews, and now I gotta get my revenge. It's one of the most audacious openings to a movie. He's leafing through photos of his family and going, killed by Brian Mills, killed by Brian Mills. He's throwing them all into a mass grave, and he went, I will find this man. And then it cuts to the fucking Liam Neeson yelling at a car wash attendant.
All right. Well,
This is our 5-hour episode on Life of Pi.
we're done.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Ray, what
Do you have
else?
any final thoughts?
What else do you want to say before we head off into the sunset?
Like Richard Parker, without looking back.
I'm just so honored to be a part of this.
Oh,
This show has
come
been
on.
incredibly important to me for the last 2 years.
And when we were seeing, was it Rogue One? I remember you telling me how Ray had just talked to you about how much he loved the show. Remember that?
Yes.
And I was like in a rush, and I was like, "What the fuck? I don't know who you're talking about right now." And it was very
you
short
had
with
said a very nice thing to me about the show, and I related to David, and David was angry that his girlfriend, humble brag, was late to the movie.
you. Yes,
Even though we had reserved seats.
We had reserved seats.
You were very stressed out.
I was
about
very
it.
stressed out about something, and I didn't know who you were talking about. And I was
Yes.
like, "Huh?" But that has always stuck with me.
I've been
because
a
I behave badly.
massive fan of Ray's work for a very, very long time. I never told you this,
Oh,
but I literally wrote a paper on you in film school.
huh?
On your short film, Death at 10 Men.
Spoiler
Oh, wow.
alert.
Yeah.
What was
I
the
don't think it
thesis?
was very good. It was talking about, it wasn't in a film class. It was like talking about like artistic inspiration.
Wow.
Truly. And we knew the same people that didn't know each other for years and years and years. And then we sort of became friends through you listening to the podcast.
We saw Allied together.
Right. Which fucks.
That's a good movie.
Allied fucks.
I'd watch Allied again for this podcast and see what I think about it.
I'll tell you what.
I'll tell you
you'll
what.
think
Last
about it.
time I saw Allied, Donald Trump had been elected the day before.
not good.
So that may have colored my opinion of
No
it.
good, very bad. Don't do it.
I mean, my take on Allied is that I really liked the desert stuff. Like I liked it, and then it was the England stuff where it lost me. But,
Yeah, I love all of it. Ray, thank you for being
head
here.
is in his hands.
Thank you so much.
Ben is homeless
Ben's
and going through some stuff.
Through some stuff, and we love him.
Ben's sort of in the middle of his lifeboat in the middle of the ocean right now.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, and he's begging for a tiger to jump in with him.
Please. Come on. Come at me, tigers.
Ben needs company right now.
If you need to stay at my place, I actually have some room right now, for real. It's an option.
Okay, we'll talk off mic.
Yeah, you're actually going to have a conversation about this off mic.
Immediately considered that.
Yeah, thank you very much for listening. Please remember to rate, review, subscribe. Thanks to Andrew Good for our social media, Joe Bowen, Pat Reynolds for our artwork, Lane Montgomery for our theme song. Go to blankies.red.com for some real nerdy shit. And as always, truly feel free to tweet at Ben if you have a suggestion of where he lived.
Hey, Ben, also, we're sponsored today by Typeset in the Future, which is a book coming out from Abrams Books that's by blogger and designer Dave Addy. And it invites like sci-fi movie fans on a journey through genre-defining classics. You know, your 2001, your Star Trek, your Alien, your Blade Runner. These great sci-fi movies. They look at how these movies use creative visions of the future through typography and design. So, you know, you can see all these cool film stills, these concept arts, these type specimens, and then they got interviews with people like Paul Verhoeven, former subject of a Blank Check miniseries, Pod Chip Casters. So it's very geeky. It's honestly very David Sims. It's fonts and title cards and stuff like that in sci-fi movies. It's on sale November 6th from Abrams Books.